Marvel's master of multiversal magic. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 301 The Strange Black Universe. Please, the Black Sorcerer didn't answer George's question, but simply smiled and stepped aside. He didn't know who George was, but his teacher, the Ancient One, had instructed him to greet someone at the door, and he would naturally follow the Ancient One's orders. As for George's question, the Ancient One hadn't given any answers, and he figured it was better not to be good at answering. Thank you, what's your name, sorcerer? George didn't expect any answer from the Black Sorcerer, and stepped into the sanctuary, following the sorcerer towards the reception room. This New York sanctuary was clearly decorated with magic similar to his unseen stretch charm, only not as exaggerated. The overall interior area seemed 3 or 4 times larger than the actual villa. The decorations were very retro, and the various ornaments and decorations gave off a mysterious feeling. Some of the decorations had obvious magical fluctuations, suggesting they were magical items with special functions. You can call me Sorcerer Mordo, the Black Sorcerer led the way, maintaining his smile. Upon entering the reception room, a middle-aged, bald female sorcerer in a white robe appeared before George. The female sorcerer was making tea and smiled gently when she saw George enter. This is the Sorcerer Supreme, the Black Sorcerer introduced George before leaving the living room. Sorcerer George, please have a seat. Would you like some tea? The Ancient One gestured to the seat in front of her and poured George a cup of tea. George sat down, picked up the teacup, and said, "Thank you, I know why you came to see me. I can agree to your request, but there's a condition." The Ancient One didn't beat around the bush, her words were simple and direct. She had been observing George for some time and had seen many possibilities for the future, understanding his personality. This simple and direct communication style was the most suitable. George put down his cup, not answering immediately. He realized that since deciding to learn time magic from the Ancient One, she had completely taken the initiative. But a few seconds later, he smiled. "I need to know what the condition is first." Who held the initiative wasn't important, what mattered was whether the outcome of the deal would satisfy him. If the outcome satisfied him, he didn't care who held the initiative. Actually, he should have expected this before coming. Facing someone proficient in time magic who possessed the time stone and could glimpse the future, it was impossible to hold the initiative. People often say that the future is unpredictable and ever-changing, but in reality, our world's stories were already predetermined in the river of time when it first appeared. Any accidents or changes would be corrected, eventually returning to the original trajectory. But that was before. Things are different now. A guy sacrificed himself, making the stories of each universe no longer fixed, allowing for more possibilities for development. The Ancient One took a sip of her tea and looked at George, saying, "My successor, the next Sorcerer Supreme, is named Stephen Strange. You've met him. Originally, he had an unchangeable fate in this universe, and if things continued according to that fate, something terrible would happen. I didn't want to see that outcome, I wanted to change it. And you are the person I've seen with the most potential for change. If you're willing, perhaps you can change that fate." Hearing the Ancient One's words, George's body stiffened, his brain racing. After recalling all the information he knew about the Marvel Universe from his previous life, his eyes suddenly widened. So that's how it is. He was somewhat surprised that no one from the Time Bureau had come to correct him after he, a time traveler, had changed so many things. It turned out that at this time, the Loki in the parallel universe of the cinematic universe had already defeated Kang the Conqueror from the Time Bureau and become the god of stories. He also roughly knew which universe he was in. According to the Ancient One, he guessed that his universe was most likely the one that had destroyed the entire universe, the universe of the Dark Strange. In the Dark Strange universe in 2016, Stephen Strange didn't lose his hands in a car accident. Instead, his girlfriend Christine died in one. After defeating Dormammu and gaining the power of the Time Stone, he had the idea of using the Time Stone to go back in time and rewrite his girlfriend's death, and he did just that. The result was that no matter how he changed things, his girlfriend Christine couldn't avoid her fate. It was because of his girlfriend's death that he went to Kamar-Taj to find the Ancient One and became the Sorcerer Supreme, wielding the power of the Time Stone to go back in time. If his girlfriend had been saved and hadn't died, he wouldn't have gone to Kamar-Taj to become the Sorcerer Supreme and use the Time Stone to go back in time and change things. So his girlfriend's death was the turning point in his destiny, the turning point that made him the Sorcerer Supreme, granting him the power of the Time Stone, and an unchangeable past. But Darkstrange refused to give up, venturing to the lost library of Cagliostro, where he found a way to break through his destiny's turning point. That was to defeat and absorb monsters summoned from various dimensions, even dimensional demons, to gain terrifying magical power surpassing that of a single universe. In the end, he did indeed gain multidimensional power, forcibly altering the turning point of his destiny, but also causing the collapse of the entire universe. If I agree, what do you want me to do? I won't ask you to do anything. As long as you agree, the change begins, and there's a possibility of things developing in a positive direction, the Ancient One said with a smile. George was the person she had seen the most possibilities for the future, and each time she looked, more possibilities appeared, and the future of the entire universe influenced by him had even more possibilities. Although the development of the universe was no longer constrained, the turning points of destiny were not something ordinary people could influence, especially those important figures concerning the fate of the universe. Only special people like George could succeed. Okay, in that case, I agree, George nodded without hesitation. If this is indeed the universe of Darkstrange, even if the Ancient One hadn't taught him time magic, he would have found a way to change it once he knew. He didn't want Darkstrange to destroy the entire universe. He also understood the Ancient One's meaning. The reason he said there were many possibilities for change was because he had avatars in different worlds, his strength constantly increasing, naturally strengthening his influence on this universe. Because of his power, the fates of many people had already been altered. The most obvious examples are Wolverine and Professor X, who are supposed to be dead, but are now alive and well. Chapter 302 The Blue Book of the Bunker. After leaving the New York sanctum, George thought for a moment and immediately cast a tracking charm, direction manifestation, Stephen Strange. Although he felt his guess was probably correct, he still wanted to verify it himself. Following the arrow of the tracking charm, he quickly arrived at the entrance of a hospital 20 blocks away from the New York sanctum. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, and he saw Stephen leaving the hospital after get off work, but he didn't drive away immediately, seemingly waiting for someone. With a wave of his hand, he activated his superpower, forcibly causing a speeding car to swerve and crash into Stephen, who was standing on the side of the road. Oh, God! Stephen was stunned in shock when he saw the car heading towards him. At that moment, a strong hand appeared, grabbed his shoulder, and pulled him out of the path of the car's impact, saving him from injury. Be careful, Dr. Strange, George warned with a smile. Stephen snapped out of his daze and couldn't help but curse at the car that had already driven away. He then thanked George, saying, "It must have been drunk driving. These guys should be in jail for a few years to sober up." "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I would have had my colleague perform the surgery. It would be a great loss to the medical community if a doctor as excellent as Dr. Strange were to get injured," George casually remarked. Stephen was very pleased, his face immediately lighting up with a smile. He extended his hand, saying, "Hello, Stephen Strange, a neurosurgeon at this hospital. I don't know why, but I felt a sense of familiarity when I saw you. Have we met before? Just call me George. I've been to this hospital for treatment, and everyone says you're the most skilled doctor here." George shook his hand. Although he had used a forgetting charm on Stephen, it wasn't a complete erasure. It was normal for Stephen to instinctively feel a sense of familiarity. Stephen, at that moment, a beautiful woman walked out of the hospital and greeted Stephen. "Your girlfriend?" George asked deliberately. Stephen nodded. "Yes, my girlfriend, and my fiancée, Christine Palmer. She's beautiful. Congratulations." George already knew in his heart that it was probably him. In the cinematic universe, although Stephen and Christine were close, they didn't seem to be engaged yet. Later, because Stephen was often busy with Kamar-Taj affairs, he disappeared for 7 years, and Christine fell in love with someone else. Stephen even attended Christine's wedding. "Thank you, let's have dinner together, it's on me. You just saved me." Stephen looked at Christine walking over, a happy look on his face. George smiled and waved his hand. "No, I have something to do, Maybe next time. He then walked away. But as he left, he murmured to himself, since that's really the case, then I'm sorry, Doctor Strange. He certainly didn't want to kill Doctor Strange. Even if Doctor Strange would cause the destruction of the universe, the Ancient One wouldn't let him kill Doctor Strange. So he already had another solution in mind. The plan was to first cause Doctor Strange to be in a car accident before Christine's death in 2016, crippling his hands, just like in the movie universe. Then, guide him to Kamar-Taj to learn magic and restore his hands. This way, Doctor Strange would smoothly become the Sorcerer Supreme, and his fate might be altered. Meanwhile, in a desert on Earth, a plane bearing the Hydra symbol slowly landed. Original Sin, consider this repayment for your deceased father's favor. From now on, if you want a place in Hydra, you'll have to rely on yourself. Baron Zemo, one of Hydra's leaders, stepped off the plane with a group of Hydra soldiers in Hydra armor. Beside him, a cloaked woman lifted her cloak, revealing blood-red skin. Zora and Pierce's gang, they should have obeyed me. I am Father's daughter, yet they were arrogant and defeated by a few mutants. Once I get what Father left behind, I will definitely rebuild her lineage. Her name is Original Sin, daughter of Red Skull. During World War II, in order to reproduce and cultivate outstanding Hydra successors, Red Skull selected a large number of Nazi elites and women used as breeding tools, taking them to a secret island of exile. Red Skull himself also had an accidental relationship with a laundry worker, giving birth to his daughter Original Sin, who inherited his genes. However, Red Skull had a severe preference for sons and did not value Original Sin, nor did he acknowledge Original Sin as his successor. Therefore, after Red Skull's death, all his subordinates were ostensibly controlled by Zora, who had been incorporated into SHIELD. I told you long ago that the Eye of Insight project is a no-go. It's just a sitting duck in the sky. Zola and Pierce are too arrogant. But according to our intelligence, those mutants are not to be trifled with. I advise you not to provoke them for now, Baron Zemo advised. Even Baron Stratton, who was extremely obsessed with superpowers, refrained from taking action after witnessing the group of mutants, especially the so-called Principal George, who blasted the space carrier to pieces in the blink of an eye. The Superpower Academy wouldn't be short of mutants, and there was also their greatest enemy, Captain America, whom they had to eliminate to unify the world. But now wasn't the time. The enemy was too powerful, they had to wait for the right opportunity. Their specialty was waiting for the right moment, delivering a fatal blow when the enemy was most complacent and weakest. I know, do you think I'm as stupid as Pierce? A hint of disdain flashed in Original Sin's eyes. This is it. According to the information my father left behind, there should be a bunker he built down here. The two, along with Hydra's soldiers and mechas, began excavation work not far from the aircraft. Half a day later, a bunker sealed for nearly 70 years appeared before them. They forcibly carved a passage through the bunker, violently dismantling all the defenses along the way, and found a thick blue book in the lowest level hall. It really is here. Original Sin stepped forward, picked up the blue book, and quickly flipped through it. A moment later, a smile that could terrify a child appeared on her blood-red, skull-like face. Years ago, her father had been searching for mythical treasures, finding not only the Tesseract but also a divine hammer that fell from the sky. And this blue book recorded the detailed location of that divine hammer that no one could lift. Chapter 303 The Visit of the Inhumans. A week later, in the afternoon, George paraded back to school from the New York Sanctum. This week, he had made time every day to visit the Ancient One at the New York Sanctum to consult on time magic. The Ancient One, that old lazybones, was actually quite idle, spending her days teaching her disciples and drinking tea. Without dimensional demons invading, her students and their followers could handle most minor matters. Kamar-Taj had quite a few sorcerers. However, even with the Ancient One's guidance, the complexity of time magic still exceeded George's expectations, though it did significantly increase his efficiency in researching the super magic fairy sphere. He finally understood why Makarov said this magic was extremely difficult. At the same time, he couldn't help but admire the first generation who created these super magic spells. Their magical talent was truly monstrous. George, someone claiming to be an Inhuman, says they have an urgent matter and want to see you. Just back at school, before he could even process what he had learned that day, Professor X's voice suddenly echoed in George's mind. In a flash, he was already in the school's main conference room. Professor X, Wolverine, and a woman with spiky hair stood in the conference room. What's going on? George asked. Professor X pointed to the woman. She called the school saying she wanted to apply for a teaching position, but actually she has an urgent matter to discuss with you. She claims to be an inhuman. An inhuman? If I remember correctly, you guys were helping Hydra against us before, George said calmly, looking at the woman. He knew that those who helped Hydra intercept them in Washington were inhumans. He just didn't understand how the inhumans of this world had gotten involved with Hydra. Logically, they should have a deep-seated hatred. Their female leader, he remembered, had been dismembered by a Hydra doctor. But this wasn't a universe, so there might be many differences. We were forced to help Hydra. They kidnapped our families as a threat. We had no choice, the spiky-haired inhuman quickly explained. George walked up to the inhuman, his expression cold. So, what's your purpose here today? He wasn't interested in whether the inhumans were threatened by Hydra, or the relationship between the two. As long as Hydra didn't target him separately, what did it matter to him even if they bombed the White House? He'd rather spend his time studying time magic than meddling in other people's business. He wasn't a savior, nor was he that benevolent. My name is Lena. My ability is to see fragments of the future. A great catastrophe is about to befall this world, and our inhuman race will be affected. Only you can save us, save everyone. Seeing George frown, Lena quickly explained, Hydra's original sin gained terrifying power from a hammer and released an evil god called the Serpent in the deep sea of the Marian Strait in the Pacific Ocean. In the future I saw, it was that serpent that caused the terrible disaster. The leader said that if you are willing to help us and rescue our loved ones, then our entire inhuman race is willing to join your school and obey your orders. Compared to the cruel Hydra, George, who is willing to take on the role of an inhuman and protect other inhumans, was clearly much better. Therefore, their leader, Jia Ying, after learning about the future she saw, secretly sent her to find George, hoping to use this opportunity to completely break free from Hydra's control. A great catastrophe, the evil god serpent. A flash of doubt crossed George's eyes. He knew about original sin. Although he hadn't heard of this person in his previous life, he was indeed listed in Zola's database. She was Red Skull's daughter, born unexpectedly, and possessed some of Red Skull's genes. Her physical abilities were slightly stronger than the average person, but she held little status within the massive Hydra organization. As for Orochi, he had never heard of him before. The name he remembered was Orochi from the King of Fighters, the one who fired solar particles and had the ability to destroy the world. However, that Orochi didn't belong to the Marvel Universe, and this was clearly not the case here. Rina, this inhuman, did indeed have the ability to see glimpses of the future, and his psychic abilities could also determine that Rina wasn't lying. It seems it's better to eliminate this Hydra organization sooner rather than later. Originally, he felt that Hydra posed no real threat to him, so he hadn't paid much attention to it. Keeping it around could at least cause some trouble for the world's major governments, preventing them from being brain dead and trying to control this superpower academy. But now it seemed that although Hydra wasn't a huge threat, they always managed to cause trouble and draw out some threatening beings, like this evil god serpent living in the deep sea. I wonder what kind of being it is. Could it be a projection of some dimensional demon god? Otherwise, how could it bring crisis to the entire world? George agreed to Lena's request after a moment's thought. Alright, I can save your loved ones, but you need to find a way to get me more information about the serpent. For him, saving his loved ones hidden by Hydra was too easy. As long as he was told their names, he could use a tracking spell to find and rescue them one by one. What he was more concerned about now was the origin of this evil god called the Serpent. No problem. Our leader, Jia Ying, is required to stay at Baron Stratford's base most of the time, so she has access to information from the highest levels of Hydra. Lena nodded quickly in agreement. Write down the names of all the people who are being held hostage by Hydra, and then call your inhuman who can teleport over. I'm going out for a bit. George gave Lena a few instructions, then asked Professor X to keep an eye on Lena before apparating back to the New York sanctum. He planned to ask the Ancient One if she knew anything about this evil serpent. Sorcerer George, why are you back again? The sorcerer guarding the New York sanctum looked surprised to see George. George smiled and said, I need to see the Sorcerer Supreme. Is she still there? The Sorcerer Supreme returned to Kamar-Taj after you left, the guard replied. If you want to find her, go to the second floor. There's a portal there that leads directly to Kamar-Taj. Alright, I'll go to Kamar-Taj then. George turned and headed towards the second floor of the sanctum. The arcane sorcerers of Kamar-Taj could draw circles to create teleportation portals, but that consumed their magic. Therefore, the Ancient One had built magical portals within each of the sanctums, so even novice sorcerers who hadn't mastered the circle drawing technique could travel to various parts of the world through these portals. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304 Core, the God of Fear. The Ancient One has truly collected quite a few magical artifacts over the years. Reaching the second floor, passing a room dedicated to displaying these artifacts, George couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The Ancient One had previously shown him around the second floor. Inside, besides the levitation cloak Doctor Strange wore, there was the magically powerful axe of Angaram, the icon bell that could create a tunnel between Earth and the Awaken dimension, the black mirror that could view other dimensions, the Pomgalian brazier that allowed entry into Mephisto's realm in the Hell dimension, and so on. Reaching the end of the second floor, several magical portals appeared before him. By turning a button to access Kamar-Taj, and stepping through the portal, he arrived at the true headquarters of Kamar-Taj, located in the Himalayas near Kathmandu. Master George, what brings you here? Mordo was also taken aback to see George at Kamar-Taj. Although George consulted the Ancient One on magic at the New York Sanctum every day, this was his first time visiting the Kamar-Taj headquarters. I have urgent business with the Sorcerer Supreme. It concerns the safety of the entire Earth. Please follow me. Hearing George say it concerned the safety of Earth, Mordo didn't dare delay and immediately led George through several rooms to the large plaza outside. At this time, the Ancient One was instructing novice arcane mages on the use of magic in the plaza. Seeing Mordo appear with George, she was also somewhat surprised. What happened? She keenly sensed something amiss. George didn't waste any time and asked directly, Sorcerer Supreme, do you know about the serpent? I received news that Hydra has recently released an evil god called the Serpent in the deep sea of the Marian Strait in the Pacific Ocean. What? The serpent? The god of terror, Core? This is troublesome. The Ancient One's pupils shrank upon hearing this. Seeing the Ancient One's changed expression, George knew that the serpent was indeed no ordinary being. Otherwise, it wouldn't have troubled even the Ancient One. Is he a dimensional demon from beyond the realms? Not really. He's actually from Asgard, the brother of Odin, the Allfather. The Ancient One shook her head and explained, Ker was known as the God of Terror. After becoming the ruler of Asgard, he became extremely tyrannical. Odin overthrew Ker's rule and sealed him in the Marian Strait in the Pacific Ocean. Huh? Did Odin seal away his eldest daughter, Hela? George was immediately bewildered. The Ancient One looked at George in surprise. It seems you know quite a bit. Hela, the goddess of death, was indeed sealed on Earth, in Norway. Okay, why does everything have to be sealed on Earth? Can't it be sealed in its own world? George was speechless. The Ancient One sighed, because Earth is located in the center of the world, the birthplace of many ancient gods, and the core of the universe. It possesses special power, making it most suitable for sealing powerful beings. There are many planets and civilizations in the universe, and many gods as well. But Earth is the most unique planet. Although its civilization is not advanced, it has given birth to many powerful ancient gods, such as Gaia, Ashutu, Set, and Sithon. Why do many dimensional demons keep invading Earth instead of other planets in the universe? It's because only by occupying and devouring Earth can they devour the entire universe. The arcane sorcerers of Kamar-Taj protect not only the safety of Earth but also the safety of the entire universe, a weighty responsibility. This is a matter for the Asgardians, and we at Kamar-Taj shouldn't interfere. I suggest you inform Thor. Isn't he currently a guest at your school? That makes sense. It doesn't seem right to rashly interfere in other people's affairs. Hearing the Ancient One's words, George instantly understood her meaning. It was simple. Although the god of terror, Ker, had been unsealed on Earth, Kamar-Taj didn't intend to deal with him. The excuse of not wanting to rashly interfere in other people's affairs was just a made-up excuse. He could understand it, actually. During my recent consultations with the Ancient One about time magic, I learned some history about Kamar-Taj in this universe. Kamar-Taj was founded around 5000 BC by a human named Agamotto after repelling Dormammu's invasion, and includes the three sanctums on Earth. Its purpose was to prevent dimensional demons like Dormammu from invading Earth and devouring the universe. According to Thor, Odin led the Asgardian army to conquer the 9 realms connected by the World Tree starting in 679 BC, becoming the ruler of the 9 realms. However, he discovered that before Thor came to Earth, Asgard did not station troops there as they did with the other realms, essentially leaving humanity to develop on its own. This doesn't make sense. The Dark Elves' planet was destroyed, and the Frost Giants still had Laufey and a large number of Frost Giants. A peace treaty had been signed. As for Earth, he speculated that it might be due to the existence of Kamar-Taj. In his view, Odin's power and the Sorcerer Supreme's power should be roughly equal. Odin could unleash his full power in Asgard, while the Sorcerer Supreme could unleash his full power on Earth. Something must have happened between them. Kamar-Taj acknowledged Odin's status as the ruler of the 9 realms, but Odin couldn't actually rule Earth. Doctor Strange's attitude towards Thor and Loki in the movies also shows that the arcane sorcerers knew about Asgard and harbored hostility towards Loki for bringing chaos to Earth. Therefore, the Ancient One and Odin definitely knew each other, but their relationship wasn't necessarily close. Both seemed like benevolent figures, but in reality, neither was easy to deal with. Odin conquered the 9 realms, killing countless people and deliberately concealing the existence of his daughter Hela. The Ancient One, as long as her bottom line wasn't crossed, didn't really care how many people died. She went to great lengths and sacrificed many lives to pass the title of Sorcerer Supreme to Stephen. He certainly didn't believe the Ancient One couldn't save the arcane sorcerers killed by Caecilius or subdue Caecilius beforehand. In his view, the Ancient One didn't want to clean up Odin's mess. Kur's ultimate goal was definitely to reclaim Asgard and take back the throne from Odin. It might cause some damage to Earth, but it certainly wouldn't destroy it. If the Ancient One intervened with the arcane sorcerers, even if they could deal with Kur, Kamar-Taj would suffer heavy losses. If a dimensional lord then took the opportunity to invade Earth, that would be a real problem. When the Chitauri army invaded Earth, the Ancient One merely stood above the sanctuary, dealing with some Chitauri soldiers who might threaten the sanctuary, without intervening in anything. Chapter 305 The Heavenly Hammer Venerable. Should I get involved? George pondered as he left the New York sanctum. We'll see. Whether he intervened or not depended on whether there were any benefits. If the benefits were enough, he wouldn't mind helping Asgard like last time. Kur, as Odin's brother, was certainly powerful. However, having been sealed away for so many years, and being on Earth without access to Asgard's power, he wasn't afraid. Recently, besides researching time magic, he had also been studying alchemy. He planned to move the entire school into the air, which would require levitation charms, flight charms, and magical airship technology. With a large amount of Yoru metal, things would be much easier. It all depended on the situation. He might want to intervene, but he might not even have the opportunity. If Odin was willing to intervene personally, Kur probably wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. Direction manifestation. Thor Odinson. He needed to find Thor first, inform him of Kur's situation, and have him return to Asgard to inform Odin. Flying along, he quickly found Thor in the faculty dormitory area of New York University, guided by a tracking charm. Thor, wearing roller skates and using Mjolnir as a guide, was leading Jane around the path below the dormitory building, grinning foolishly, seemingly learning to skate with her. They exuded a sweet, cloying aura of love. George, what brings you here? Both Thor and Jane were startled by George's sudden appearance. George said seriously, your Uncle Kur has broken free of his seal. My uncle. Thor was momentarily stunned. He had no idea he had an uncle. George immediately realized that Kur and Hela were in the same situation. Odin had blocked all their information. He quickly relayed what he knew to Thor. Thor took a while to process what he'd heard. I never expected this, he said, turning to Jane and giving her a few instructions before calling out to the sky. Heimdall, a rainbow bridge descended from the sky, appearing on the nearby lawn. George, I'll go back to Asgard to inform Father God first. Don't worry, Asgard will not let Kur go unpunished. Thor dashed across the rainbow bridge and teleported back to Asgard. After informing Thor, George paraded back to the school. In the main conference room, besides Raina, there was another Inhuman, the eyeless man who could teleport. Is the list finished? Yes. Raina handed George a piece of paper, which listed the relatives of the Inhumans who had been kidnapped by Hydra and were hidden in various bases around the world. The leader sent the latest news, that evil god called Serpent has summoned 7 more hammers. Everyone who obtains a hammer gains power as great as the original sin. However, they are all controlled by Serpent. Now, several Hydra leaders have submitted to Serpent because of the hammers, and they seem to be planning an attack on the White House. An attack on the White House. George was stunned. He didn't understand why Cure would attack the White House. Did he intend to control America? An attack is fine, as long as it's not his school. It won't affect him. He wouldn't act until he received news from Thor. He wasn't Superman. He wouldn't be running around the world rescuing people. With natural disasters and man-made calamities, countless people died on Earth every day. He couldn't possibly save everyone. He wasn't a saint. Besides, human nature is inherently evil and unpredictable. Even if you kindly offered help, there was no guarantee of a good outcome. Some people might even feel that your presence brought disaster. He didn't want to become that kind of victim. If you were to intervene, it would be when everyone was in despair, appearing as a savior to reap all gratitude and maximize his benefits. Don't call him too opportunistic. He believed that even when being a good person, one should be a smart one, otherwise, you'd end up with nothing to show for your efforts. It's better to be a bad person. Do you know who he gave those 8 hammers to? Original Sin, Baron Zemo, Baron Stratholm, Lady Hydra, Hive, and 3 others who aren't Hydra members. The leader said one wears a special Black Panther suit, one has blue skin and likes to soak in water, and one can breathe fire. The eyeless man, Gordon, replied. George frowned slightly. He knew the first 5, but he wasn't so sure about the last 3. The one wearing the Black Panther suit was most likely Black Panther, but he didn't know if it was T'Challa or T'Chaka, since the old king of Wakanda was still alive at this time. The blue-skinned one who liked to soak in water was probably an Atlantean, but he wasn't sure if it was King Namor. As for the one who could breathe fire, he couldn't guess who it was for a moment, but it shouldn't be the Man of Fire. He hadn't found any Fantastic Four in this world. Anyone who touched Cull's hammer would be controlled by the Serpent, so it wouldn't be surprising who it was. But for George, it didn't really matter. Although Lord Skyhammer of Kur's power was greatly enhanced by the Divine Hammer, he was at most on par with Thor and posed no real threat. His main concern was Cure's strength. Let's go rescue them first, George said to the eyeless man. We'll split up. I'll find everyone on the list and rescue them. You're responsible for getting your leader and all the other Inhumans to the school. Since the Inhumans had provided valuable intelligence and he had agreed to cooperate, he would naturally ensure their safety. They're definitely scattered around the world. Can you manage in time? Gordon asked, a hint of worry in his eyes. Once the operation began, Hydra would inevitably discover it. He could get all his people to the school quickly, but if George couldn't rescue everyone before Hydra found out, he feared they would kill them. George smiled and said, Don't worry, we'll make it, but not now. I'll find their location first, then notify you. We'll teleport simultaneously, so Hydra won't have time to react. Gordon then realized that not only could he teleport, but George could too. So he nodded and agreed to George's plan. Is there anything I can help with? Wolverine eagerly extended his claws. George waved his hand. Not for now, but classes will be temporarily suspended for the next 2 days. Notify everyone to assemble. When Thor returns, there might be a tough battle. He guessed that Thor might bring the Asgardian army to Earth to deal with Kur. However, Odin might not come personally. Without Odin, Thor would probably have a hard time fighting Kur and his 8 hammer masters, and he might have to lead a rescue team. Approaching to the sky above the school, he first became invisible, and then he began to use his animagus transformation. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a giant dragon with golden wings. Chapter 306 Fear Descends. After transforming into a dragon using his animagus powers, George's overall strength increased dramatically, and his magic power surpassed the level 1000 limit. Similarly, in this form, the power of his various spells was enhanced. His apparition could now cover the entire Earth, and his flight speed received an epic boost. He could use a tracking spell to locate his inhuman relatives around the world, then apparate to take them away at top speed. With a flap of his wings and a sonic boom, George vanished in the blink of an eye, following the golden arrow. Frankly, he felt that with his current physical strength and flight speed, even without magic, he could randomly run over and kill a powerful opponent. The combination of the advantages of 3 world dragons was no joke. According to his calculations, in his current state, even taking a nuclear bomb to the face shouldn't be a problem. This was the source of his confidence that he could contend with Kur. Before, he would never have believed he could fight someone of Kur's level. Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, Britain, France, Portugal. It took him several hours to travel almost the entire globe, finally pinpointing the locations of all 30 inhuman relatives. Returning to the school, he notified Gordon, and the two simultaneously began their operation. Gordon first teleported to Baron Stratford's base to retrieve their leader, Jia Ying, then returned to the Inhuman settlement in the future, transporting the Inhumans and their relatives one by one. George simultaneously apparated to each of the previously identified individuals, rescuing them one by one without alerting the Hydra soldiers, placing them in boxes. The entire process took less than 10 minutes, and all the Inhumans and their relatives were transferred to the school's playground. The number wasn't large, only a little over 100 in total. We need to expand the school, George thought to himself, looking at the newly added 100+ people. Although he could use the unseen stretch charm to expand space, he couldn't create houses out of thin air. During this period, the school had already seen a significant increase in superpowered individuals and their families, leaving few rooms available. Now, with over 100 more people joining, it was becoming very crowded. However, this wasn't a major problem. He planned to use a mountain-moving spell to move an entire residential building to the school to serve as dormitories, accommodating even a few hundred more people. Mr. George, thank you for your help to our Inhuman race. From today onward, we Inhumans will obey your orders. Seeing her family members, who had been imprisoned, rescued and embracing their people, Jia Ying, with her daughter Daisy, approached George with gratitude. She had made the right bet. George indeed had the ability to save the Inhumans. George smiled and waved his hand. No need for that. I'm not Hydra, I won't force you to do anything. We already taken superpowered individuals here. If you wish, you can all stay at the school as teachers, and your children can attend. Whether you help when the school encounters problems is also your prerogative. He believed that once the Inhumans lived at the school for a while, they would inevitably integrate. In this world, besides the Superpower Academy, where else can they live and reside so safely? Therefore, there's no need to treat them too deliberately. This is good too. The addition of the Inhumans has strengthened the overall strength of the Superpower Academy. They can handle anything that comes their way in the future, and he can concentrate more on learning magic. Meanwhile, at the Hydra base in Sokovia, these guys dared to run away. Once I've unified Earth and Asgard with the God King, I'll deal with them slowly. Baron Strat, wielding a giant hammer and whose body had doubled in size due to divine power, slammed his hammer into the ground in anger after hearing the report from his Hydra agents, creating a large crater. However, despite his anger at the Inhumans' betrayal, he didn't order his men to search for their whereabouts. He had a more important task to complete. Strat, the God King summons us. We should set off. Baron Zemo, carrying another divine hammer, appeared at the doorway. Upon hearing this, Strat's expression immediately turned fanatical. He shouted back, Great God of terror, Strat answers your call. Half an hour later, in the base's main square, the 8 great hammer masters stood in a row, each wielding a giant hammer, behind them a dense array of Hydra soldiers. Since most of the Hydra's leaders had become great hammer masters, this area now housed almost all of Hydra's soldiers, along with the most advanced weaponry and equipment developed by Hydra. This included not only various tanks and bombs, but also mechas and newly developed large war machine monsters. Standing before the 8 great hammer masters was Clover, the god of terror and Odin's brother. Due to years of sealing, Clover appeared even older than Odin, holding a scepter, his hair and beard white and almost touching the ground. He looked down at the 8 great hammer masters and the Hydra soldiers, his aged voice resonating in everyone's ears. My children, now, let me lead you to spread fear to every corner of the world, so that everyone may live under my terror. He gently tapped his scepter on the ground, and divine power immediately enveloped the entire Sokovia. The immense divine power caused Sokovia to tremble, then cracks appeared, and it slowly rose from the ground, taking flight. As Sokovia took off, most of the city's buildings collapsed, burying countless people beneath, and widespread fear spread throughout the city. Kur opened his mouth and inhaled deeply, the fear entering his body, and his body began to gradually recover, quickly transforming from a decrepit old man into a dignified middle-aged man. This was his ability. He could absorb the power of fear to restore his body and strengthen his divine power. Go! With a wave of his scepter, Sokovia, carrying the 8 Heavenly Hammer Venerables and the Hydra army, flew towards Washington, D.C. According to the intelligence provided by Original Sin, the United States was currently the most powerful country in the mortal world, and he wanted to destroy its capital first, letting the entire world feel despair. In this way, he can absorb the power of fear from the entire mortal world, greatly increasing his strength. Only in this way can he return to the realm of gods, defeat Odin who possesses the power of the realm, regain his position as the ruler of the realm, and reclaim everything that belongs to him. Odin, you traitor who usurped the throne, I will kill you. I will kill all your relatives. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival everyone. I have guests coming over this afternoon, so there will only be 2 chapters. I'm posting this early. Chapter 307 The Vanished High-Ranking Government Officials. Fitz, have you located the 7 hammers? At the SHIELD base, the newly appointed Director Callison inquired of Leo Fitz, head of the Technology Department. After the Insight Project incident, although SHIELD achieved final victory with George's help, it was no longer trusted by governments worldwide, and its strength was significantly weakened. However, even a weakened giant is still formidable. It was once the world's largest organization, and even with its remaining agents and technology, it was still a force to be reckoned with. Therefore, the U.S. government took over, providing financial assistance and transforming SHIELD into a department dedicated to serving the United States, just like the CIA and FBI. The only difference was the distribution of responsibilities. The CIA's main tasks were to openly and covertly collect political, cultural, and technological intelligence on foreign governments, companies, and individuals, coordinate the activities of other domestic intelligence agencies, and share this intelligence and reports with various departments of the U.S. government. The FBI's main focus was counterterrorism, counter-espionage, and criminal investigations, with jurisdiction over more than 200 federal crimes. SHIELD is currently responsible for handling all domestic supernatural events, as well as dealing with the Superpower Academy, which the U.S. government sees as a ticking time bomb, and whose fate remains undecided. A week ago, SHIELD, responsible for outer space security, detected 7 hammers of varying shapes appearing in outer space and falling to Earth. This was clearly not normal. Therefore, SHIELD took over and began tracking the location of the 7 hammers to investigate whether they posed a threat to the nation. Based on the data provided by SWASS regarding the fluctuations of the 7 hammers, I created corresponding trackers, connected them to radar, and successfully located the 7 hammers. Furthermore, I discovered that besides those 7 hammers, there is an 8th hammer with similar fluctuations, possibly existing on Earth long ago. Fitz continued, showing his radar. The 8th hammer is located in Sokovia, and 4 of the other 7 hammers initially landed in Sokovia, coinciding with the location of the 8th hammer. The remaining 3 hammers landed in Wakanda, a small African country, in the sea near Spain, and in Florida near Miami. However, now all 3 hammers are concentrated in Sokovia. Sokovia, could it be related to Hydra? Callison frowned upon hearing this. Pierce was eliminated, but that didn't mean Hydra was completely finished. Based on their brutal interrogation of captured Hydra agents, they discovered numerous Hydra bases scattered across the world, with Pierce being just one of them. They've now confirmed that a significant Hydra base likely exists in Sokovia. The fact that 1 hammer first appeared in Sokovia, followed by 7 more from outer space, all converging, strongly suggests a connection to Hydra. Looks like we need to head to Sokovia. Callison immediately decided to personally lead a team to investigate the 8 hammers. Notify May's assembly team, depart in half an hour, Director, emergency. Just then, a SHIELD agent rushed in, reporting to Callison, the entire city of Sokovia has taken off and is heading towards Washington. What? Fitz, access satellite surveillance. Callison's expression changed, and he quickly instructed Fitz to activate satellite surveillance to view the rising Sokovia. With Fitz's dazzling maneuvers, a projection appeared on the room screen. The projection showed satellite footage of Sokovia hurtling through the air at high speed, along with magnified images of the giant serpent and the 8 heavenly hammer venerables standing at the forefront of Sokovia, and countless Hydra soldiers. Oh, shit, quickly notify the Minister of Defense to activate missile interception. Also, contact George, the principal of the Superpower Academy. We might need his help. On the other side, the giant serpent sensed the dense barrage of missiles approaching, a hint of disdain on its face. It didn't even take action itself, merely gesturing to the 8 heavenly hammer venerables behind it. Mortals' outdated technology and weapons are inferior even to the exterminated dark elves. Killian, go handle it, my honor, great god. A middle-aged man with slicked back hair and a suit suddenly erupted in flames, flicking his red hammer, which flew into the air, transforming into a fiery streak that instantly destroyed all the missiles. His name was Aldreezy Killian, one of the creators of the Extremis virus. A week ago, a fiery red hammer suddenly landed in front of him. When he picked up the hammer, he discovered that his body, already enhanced by the Extremis virus, had been further strengthened, transforming him from a mortal into a god. At the same time, he understood his mission, to forever seek and assist his master, the god of fear, Kur, the great god, and the only truth. It seems everyone is getting impatient, so let's go even faster. After countless missiles were intercepted, Kur clearly felt another portion of the power of fear enter his body, and his strength recovered somewhat. Therefore, the flight speed of Sokovia increased another level. Before the second wave of missiles arrived, Sokovia had already appeared directly above the White House in Washington. Poor mortals, feel fear. The scepter was gently slammed into the ground, and the entire city of Sokovia crashed down heavily. Boom, with a loud bang, the president, vice president, secretary of state, secretary of defense, and other high-ranking officials who were holding an emergency meeting at the White House were all crushed into a bloody pulp. Meanwhile, a large area of Washington, D.C., centered on the White House, was also devastated by Sokovia's landing. A massive amount of fear gathered in the sky above the city, absorbed by Kur, making him even more powerful. My children, spread fear. Make all the mortals of the world tremble. This is just the beginning. Under Kur's command, the 8 heavenly hammer venerables led Hydra's soldiers to charge towards the approaching army, beginning a massacre and widespread destruction in Washington. This horrific scene was broadcast live by reporters from various television stations who, for the sake of headlines, never knew the meaning of death. Actually, these reporters were quite safe today, because Kur, wanting more humanity to see the devastation in Washington and absorb more fear, specifically instructed them not to attack the reporters. Chapter 308 The Divine Army Descends on Earth. Is Earth doomed? People around the world watched live on television as powerful armies and advanced weapons were easily destroyed like clay chickens and dogs before the Hydra forces led by the 8 heavenly hammers. Fear gradually rose in their hearts. Even the American army couldn't resist those monsters. How could their countries possibly stand up? Would their cities become like Washington, a living hell? The fear in these people's hearts was absorbed by Cal, making him even stronger. George, we need your help. Name your price. At the SHIELD base in New York, Carlson had witnessed the devastation in Washington and knew that the regular army in SHIELD were no match for the Hydra led by the self-proclaimed god of fear. They could only turn to George and the superhumans at George's school for help. Now that most of the country's higher-ranking officials were dead, he, as the director of SHIELD, was one of the most powerful figures. If George was willing to help, he truly had the power to fulfill most of his promises. Carlson, don't worry. That god of terror comes from Asgard. I've already notified Thor, and he's returned to Asgard. He should be leading the Asgardian army to support us soon. At this moment, George, along with Professor X and other teachers from the university, was watching the live broadcast and naturally saw the situation in Washington. Before answering the phone, he was lamenting the many disasters that had befallen Sokovia. This world didn't have Ultron raising Sokovia to smash Earth, but Kurt raised it, and the death toll was probably much higher than in the Ultron incident. As soon as he finished speaking, a colorful beam of light descended from the sky on the television. Thor, wearing his Thor armor and wielding Mjolnir, appeared with the warriors 3 of Asgard, the goddess Sif, and countless Asgardian warriors in golden armor. See, here they come. Don't worry, Earth isn't so easily destroyed, but our capital is about to be gone. After hanging up the phone, Carlson couldn't help but rub his temples before focusing his attention back on the video. He only hoped that, as George said, Thor and his Asgardian soldiers could defeat those guys and save Washington. You all get ready. If Thor can't handle things, we'll go help, George instructed the teachers before apparating away. He felt that Kur's entire operation was deliberate and suspicious, and planned to ask the Ancient One for more details. According to Kur's declaration in the video, he seemed to intend to destroy city after city, forcing the entire Earth to submit to his rule, without mentioning returning to Asgard. If that was the case, he couldn't stand idly by. The world being in chaos wouldn't benefit him. Kur is the god of fear. The more humans fear him, the stronger he becomes. He won't attack cities one by one, he's just collecting the power of fear in this way. Once his power is restored, he'll leave Earth, so don't worry, the Ancient One explained in the New York Sanctum after understanding George's doubts. George immediately understood, his eyes darting around. Does he have any weaknesses? Since Odin hadn't come to Earth, he felt Thor's chances of winning weren't high, and he might still have to intervene. Defeating Kur would be equivalent to saving the world. Not only would Odin owe him a favor, but all of humanity would. And it would also benefit the future development of the Superpower Academy. However, he would definitely only appear when everyone was in despair, but then Kur would become incredibly powerful due to fear. Therefore, understanding Kur's weaknesses would greatly increase his chances of winning. A weakness? There is one, the Ancient One explained with a smile. Since he gained power from fear, he can naturally lose power from fear as well. If everyone stops fearing him, if he himself experiences fear, then his power will be greatly weakened. It's said that Odin was able to defeat and seal Kur because he had no fear of Kur, making it difficult for Kur to fully unleash his power. I see. That's not impossible. Hearing the Ancient One's words, George immediately had a plan. Thank you, Ancient One. Having obtained the information he wanted, George paraded back to the school. However, upon returning, he froze, then muttered to himself, I feel like I've been tricked. He wasn't saying the information the Ancient One gave him was false. The Ancient One wasn't that unscrupulous, but rather that she said she wouldn't interfere in Odin's family affairs or stop Kur. If the Ancient One truly didn't intend to get involved, why did she know so much about Kur, even knowing his weaknesses? He felt that the Ancient One had deliberately said that to him. As for her purpose, it was simple, to use him as a tool to resolve the crisis facing Earth. This way, the Ancient One herself would be free. Oh well, whatever, as long as it benefits me, it doesn't matter. George thought for a moment and decided it didn't seem important. Whether he was truly being used or just a tool, he felt that as long as he gained something, these things were irrelevant. No matter how powerful you are, you can be used by someone even more powerful. He's not someone who cares about saving face. He won't feel ashamed just because he's been used, and he won't have to fight back. As expected, no match for him. On the television, Thor hadn't even touched Kur before he was already being beaten badly by two of the Skyhammer Masters. Working together, the Warriors 3 and Sif, working together, could only hold off one Skyhammer Master, while the other 5 Skyhammer Masters, leading Hydra, were driving the Asgardian army into a rout. Professor, defend the base. The rest of you, get in my box, we're going to help. George took out a box and put Logan, Steve, Dr. Banner, the newly joined superpowered teacher, and Daisy from the Inhumans inside. Then he paraded to the skies above New York. However, he didn't attack immediately. Instead, he became invisible in the air. Thor Odinson, it seems your father, my despicable brother, doesn't dare leave Asgard to fight me here. Very well, then I'll wait until I return to Asgard and personally take his head. Hanging it on a branch of the World Tree, Kur stood atop the highest point of Sokovia City, watching Thor being ganged up on by his 2 heavenly hammer venerables, his face filled with resentment towards Odin. Chapter 309 Loki, the Savior. You will not be allowed to insult the Father God, Thor roared, summoning a vast expanse of lightning with Mjolnir to temporarily halt the 2 heavenly hammer lords. He then swung the hammer at Kur. However, Kur merely emitted 2 beams of divine light from his eyes, sending Thor flying. Your father is a usurper. I am the true father of the gods, the Lord of Asgard. Thor, are you alright? Just then, Tony, clad in his golden legendary armor, flew in from afar and caught Thor, who had been knocked away by Kur. He had seen the incident in Washington on television and rushed over. It's alright, this injury is nothing. Thor stood up, the wound on his chest from the divine light slowly healing. Tony turned to Kur. Hey, you stage actor, don't you know you look like you deserve a beating? Did your father teach you manners? Actually, his father is my grandfather, he's my uncle, Thor added from the side. Tony asked with some surprise, how come your family keeps producing these mentally unstable guys? Last time it was your brother, and this time it's your uncle. Loki was adopted, and this was just an accident. Thor looked at the Hammer Master who had surrounded them again. Forget it, now is not the time to discuss this. Let's think about how to deal with them, one each. Tony extended his Euro metal claws, and Asgardian laser cannons extended from his back. However, before he could even make a move, a roar rang out from afar. "Tony Stark, you damned bastard, I'll repay you 100-fold for the humiliation you suffered back then." A flame rose in the distance, and Killian, wielding a giant red hammer, abandoned the Asgardian soldiers around him and charged angrily towards Tony. "Hey, do we have some deep-seated grudge? I don't even know you." Seeing Killian attacking, Tony had no choice but to step forward to fight, and Thor was back to his previous 1-against-2 situation. Although Tony's arrival relieved Asgard of the burden of one of the Skyhammer Masters, the battlefield was still largely unfavorable for Asgard, as 4 Skyhammer Masters remained unchallenged. Fortunately, a strange spaceship suddenly appeared above the battlefield. A figure in a Black Panther suit, leading a group of bald female warriors wielding long spears, jumped from the spaceship and joined the battle. Their target was the Skyhammer Master, also in a Black Panther suit and wielding a black hammer. "Father, please regain your senses." It turned out that the one who possessed Kur's black hammer was the old Black Panther, T'Chaka, and his son, T'Challa, had brought his personal guard to rescue his father and restore his sanity from Kur's control. The Black Panther's arrival relieved another Skyhammer Master, stabilizing the battlefield somewhat. However, the problem remained. Kur, the most powerful being, had not yet made his move. "A bunch of mortal trash, then let me bestow some power upon you." Kur frowned slightly as he looked at the Hydra soldiers who, were it not for the Celestial Venerable, would have been utterly crushed by the Asgardian army. He then waved his scepter, dispersing some of his power of fear. Upon receiving Kur's power of fear, the Hydra soldiers' faces contorted with terror, their bodies rapidly expanding and twisting, transforming into monsters covered in serpent scales and possessing immense strength. The balance was instantly shattered once more, and the Asgardian army began to rout. "It's about time to make a move." Seeing this, George, hidden in the air, knew the time was right and it was time to strike. However, the next second, he stopped. Why is this guy here? Because at that moment, a magical rift suddenly appeared on the battlefield, and Loki, wearing a crown, emerged from it with a beautiful woman. Behind them were towering frost giant warriors. "Ha ha ha, you lowly mortals, your savior has arrived." Loki, Thor, seeing Loki appear, was stunned and immediately received a beating from the 2 Hammer Masters. "My dear brother, you didn't expect this, did you? I escaped from prison to Jotunheim and subdued all the frost giants there. From today onwards, I will let father know that I am his most useful son." Loki pointed at Kur, hands on his hips, and said smugly, "My valiant warriors, go and take down that guy." After his last plan failed and he was imprisoned, he met the enchantress Lorelei. The two hit it off immediately. One used enchantment, the other hypnotized, controlling the Asgardian guards to open the prison gates and sneak out. Because Odin was in Asgard, they dared not cause trouble, so they planned to come to Jotunheim. Taking advantage of the chaos among the frost giants of Jotunheim due to the death of King Laufey, they had a perfect opportunity. Furthermore, possessing the bloodline of the frost giant king, he finally became the new frost giant king of Jotunheim through a series of scheming and seductive hypnosis. His foolish brother Thor, who had previously come to Jotunheim, believed he had quelled the unrest, but in reality, he had secretly seized control of the kingdom. However, he didn't lead the frost giants in a counterattack against Asgard. Firstly, he felt that with Odin present, it would be suicidal. Secondly, he didn't want to attack Asgard. In prison, he had come to a realization, since Odin wanted him to be the frost giant king, he would become the frost giant king, showing Odin who was truly fit to be king and proving how wrong his previous decision had been. He had just learned of Kull's escape from the seal, so he gathered his frost giant army and, through the magical rift leading to Earth he had previously found, arrived on Earth. He wanted to become the savior, to completely overshadow his brother Thor, and for all mortals to worship him and understand that he was superior to Thor. "This guy is really arrogant and childish." George, invisible in the air, couldn't help but twitch as he watched Loki strike a pose with his arms outstretched. Kur looked at the dense swarm of giant frost giants charging towards him, a hint of doubt on his face. How come the frost giants of Jotunheim are allied with Asgard? Before he was sealed away, Jotunheim and Asgard were mortal enemies. However, his face quickly brightened with disdain. "Loaf didn't come, but you think you can take me down?" He transformed his scepter into a long-handled giant axe, wielding it with divine power and sweeping it across. Those frost giants, tens of meters tall, were instantly cleaved in two like leaks. With just a dozen swings, a full third of the frost giants emerging from the magical rift had disappeared. While Loaf, possessing the eternal winter coffin, might make him wary, these ordinary frost giants were no more powerful than ants in his eyes. Chapter 310 George, the True Savior. How is this possible? Loki gasped as he watched the frost giants fall in droves. He hadn't expected that Cor, defeated and sealed in Midgard by Odin for so many years, would still be so powerful. If this continued, even if all the frost giant warriors joined the fight, they wouldn't be a match for Cor. Loki, send your frost giants to deal with those corrupted mortals and the Hammer Lords first. After that, we'll deal with Cure together, Thor shouted to Loki as he unleashed another burst of lightning, repelling two Hammer Lords. Loki gritted his teeth. I already thought of that. You don't need to remind me, although he didn't want to follow Thor's strategy. For now, if he didn't want to retreat to Jotunheim in disgrace, he had no choice but to do so. However, this was not the glorious scene he had envisioned. He waved his hand, summoning back all the frost giants who were ganging up on Cor and dying, ordering them to help the Asgardian army. He and the enchantress Lorelei charged towards Thor. Leave this to us, you deal with Cor. Originally, he planned to have the frost giant soldiers gang up on Cor, while he and Lorelei would ambush him while Cure was distracted. However, Cor was far too strong, so he had to change his strategy, letting Thor hold the line first. Although he didn't think Thor could defeat Cor, he believed that only by having his tough brother wear him down, or even better, injure him, would he have a chance. If the gap was too large, there was no other way but to retreat back to Jotunheim. He wasn't as foolish as Thor to stay and fight for some mortals. For the glory of Asgard, seeing Loki and Lorelei temporarily holding off the two Hammer Masters with illusions and hypnosis respectively, Thor didn't waste any words, swinging his hammer and roaring as he launched another attack on Cor. You think you can take me? As the war continued, Cor gathered more and more fear, and his strength grew ever greater. Seeing Thor swing his hammer at him, he didn't even use his giant axe. Instead, he calmly extended his left hand and caught the hammer with his bare hand. Then, a disdainful smile appeared on his face, and with a forceful squeeze, he crushed Mjolnir. How is this possible? Seeing Mjolnir crushed by his bare hand, Thor's expression changed drastically, his eyes filled with disbelief. At this moment, Cor kicked Thor over and stomped him to the ground. Your strength is too weak. You can't even unleash the full power of your sister's hammer. Strange, why didn't Odin send Hela over? Retreat. Seeing this, Loki immediately disengaged from the battle without saying a word, intending to lead the frost giants back to Jotunheim. This was simply not a battle on the same level. Staying here would only be suicide. Super magic, fairy law. However, as soon as he shouted the retreat, a huge magic circle suddenly appeared in the sky. Immediately afterwards, a pillar of light descended from the sky, enveloping everyone on the battlefield. After the flash of white light, all the Hydra soldiers who had transformed into monsters instantly collapsed to the ground. The 8 great Hammer Masters also coughed up blood, clearly suffering serious injuries. As for Cure, he had already separated from Thor, enveloping his entire body in divine power, and shouted warily into the air, "Who goes there? You can call me George." George, enveloped in holy white light, flapped his wings and slowly landed, simultaneously releasing Wolverine, Captain America, and other teachers from the school. Having just witnessed Cure crush Thor's hammer with his bare hands, he knew he couldn't wait any longer. If things continued like this, Cure's power would only increase, making it truly difficult to fight. So, he started with a powerful attack, directly using a super magic capable of wide area attacks. Once Fairy Law was activated, only those deemed enemies would be attacked, so although Thor and the others were within the attack range, they wouldn't be injured. More importantly, it created an effect that greatly boosted everyone's confidence, instantly annihilating all the weaklings, injuring the 8 great Hammer Masters, and even bringing reinforcements. This scene not only ignited the despair of the onlookers but also brought cheers from the viewers in front of their televisions. This naturally reduced their fear significantly. Cure was using the fear of the crowd to increase his strength. As their fear decreased, Cure's strength also decreased. Now, he was radiating white light, appearing even more like a god than Thor and Loki, which was also for this purpose. He wasn't the type to show off, but in this situation, he had to put on an act for it to be effective. George, sure enough, Seeing George appear with Captain America and the others, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The true savior had arrived. This guy is getting more and more terrifying. Seeing George appear, and recalling his previous beating, Loki couldn't help but retreat and hide behind Lorelei. Restored to its original state, raising his hand, he cast a restoration spell on the shattered Mjolnir. Time reversed, and the shattered Mjolnir rapidly reformed, instantly returning to its previous perfect state. You guys deal with those 8 first, I'll handle this one. George, be careful, he's terrifyingly powerful. Thor nodded, picked up Mjolnir, and joined the others in ganging up on the 8 great sorcerers. Kerr looked at George with a somewhat serious expression. The arcane mages of Midgard? Tell your sorcerer supreme Agamotto that I don't intend to truly destroy mortals, but merely gather some power and then return to Asgard. This is Asgard's own affair, and the war of the gods. You shouldn't interfere. The arcane mages of Midgard, the guardians of the Time Stone, these guys are difficult to deal with, especially their sorcerer supreme Agamotto. Back when his father, Bor, was still alive, he was wary of Agamotto. So he really only intended to cause trouble in Washington, gather enough power of fear, and then leave, not to actually destroy every city in Midgard. Upon hearing this, George's eyes lit up. He didn't deny being a sorcerer of Kamar-Taj, but instead followed Agamotto's words, saying, Agamotto is no longer the sorcerer supreme, but the Grand Elder. The sorcerer supreme of Kamar-Taj is now the Ancient One, my master. Your actions have caused the deaths of many humans, and I am here on behalf of Kamar-Taj to arrest you. The Grand Elder and the Sorcerer Supreme are watching the situation here, and I hope you won't make things difficult for me. The Ancient One had previously said that Kerr's weakness was fear. When people were no longer afraid of him, his power would weaken, and when fear began to rise within him, his strength would plummet. What he was saying now, impersonating a sorcerer of Kamar-Taj, was simply to frighten Kerr. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311 Dragon and Snake Battle. Kull had been sealed away by Odin for thousands of years and had no idea that Agamotto was no longer in Kamar-Taj. Therefore, when he brought up Agamotto, Kull was bound to feel apprehensive. Then he brought up the Ancient One, whom Kull certainly didn't recognize or know the extent of her power. But that didn't matter. After witnessing his power, Kull would inevitably start to speculate about the strength of his teacher, the Ancient One. The Ancient One was definitely stronger than her student, and with Agamotto added to the mix, even if he defeated him, he would still have to contend with the current Sorcerer Supreme and the former. Just thinking about this would make Kull waver, and wavering would weaken his power. However, although he wasn't a sorcerer of Kamar-Taj, he was learning time magic from the Ancient One, so calling him a student wasn't entirely wrong. Want to capture me? Let's see if you have the strength. Kull frowned, wielding his axe in both hands, and leaped into the air, unleashing a powerful strike aimed at George's head, attempting to cleave him in two. George didn't dodge. Instead, he used his giant magic to transform into a giant, clamping down with both hands to trap the axe that could easily slay a frost giant. Normally, he wouldn't be so reckless, but rather dodge and slowly probe with ranged magic, testing which spells were more effective against his enemy, taking a steady, step-by-step approach. But the situation was different. To reduce the fear of Kerr among the global viewers watching the live stream, he couldn't use the evasive, old-fashioned style. He had to be as aggressive as possible, building momentum and creating the impression of having the upper hand. Wood Flame Dragon Mode, Roar of the Wood Flame Dragon. With his hands firmly gripping the giant axe, preventing Kerr from escaping, George puffed out his mouth, unleashing a terrifying burst of flames directly at Kerr. The combination of wood and fire dragons, fueled by wood, made the flames George exhaled more than 10 times stronger than normal. Even Kerr was burned and had to release the axe, using all his divine power to defend himself. Dragon Slayer Secret Technique, Infinite Thunderfire Wood Crushing Fist. George tossed the divine axe directly into his transformation space, channeling the dragon power within him, dragon scales rising from his body. Then, his hands were enveloped in green and red energy, his super powerful lightning erupting in full force as he unleashed an endless barrage of aura at Kerr below. Having become a true Dragon Slayer mage, his physical body had been greatly enhanced. Now, in his giant form, He was even stronger. Cor, caught off guard by George's fire-breathing ability, was forced into a defensive stance. He had just begun to counterattack when George's endless aura interrupted his spellcasting. He could only continue to unleash his divine power to defend against George's relentless attacks. He truly hadn't expected that a mere arcane mage from Kamar-Taj could be this powerful. If it were when he had just been unsealed, he wouldn't have been a match for him. Considering that George had an even more powerful master, the Ancient One, and Agamotto, whom even his father, Boruto, feared, a sense of unease rose in his heart. This worry, once it arose, spread like poison. Coupled with the fact that the viewers in front of the television were all stunned by George's infinite aura, their fear of him had greatly diminished. And he clearly felt his power draining away. This can't continue. Cor knew that if this continued, his power of fear would dissipate, and he wouldn't be able to defeat even the arcane sorcerer before him, let alone the Ancient One and Agamotto who hadn't yet intervened. A mere mortal dares to disrespect the gods. Let me show you true fear, Cor roared, his body rapidly expanding, throwing George away, transforming into a giant serpent 3,000 or 4,000 meters long. He was called a serpent because he could truly transform into a terrifying serpent to fight. He was the true serpent of terror, Jormungandr. So big, everyone present was terrified by Cor's transformation. George's transformation into a 100-meter-tall giant had already seemed enormous, but compared to Cor's 3,000 or 4,000-meter-tall serpent, he was truly insignificant. The Oriental Pearl Tower is only about 400 meters tall, while this giant serpent, transformed from Cor, is 10 times the size of the Oriental Pearl Tower, an unbelievably enormous creature in everyone's eyes. Is this really a monster that humans can defeat? Fear descended upon everyone once more. You think you're the only one who can transform? George first dispelled the giant magic, restoring his body to its normal size, then silently chanted the incantation, Animagus. His body began to rapidly expand, transforming into a 500-meter-long dragon in the blink of an eye. A 500-meter dragon was naturally not as awe-inspiring as a 4,000-meter-long serpent, but George didn't stop. A magic circle flashed around him, and he cast giant magic again. Giant magic enlarges the body, but it's not limited to humans. He could use it in his cat form in the fairy tale world, so he could naturally use it as a dragon. Under the effect of giant magic, George transformed from a 500-meter-long dragon into a 5,000-meter-long dragon. With a 5,000-meter-long dragon facing off against a 4,000-meter-long serpent, everyone's confidence immediately returned. Just kidding, they've seen snakes before, this one's just much bigger. But dragons are something they've never seen before, and everyone naturally assumes dragons are stronger than snakes. You bastard, you're definitely not a normal human. Seeing George transform into a dragon larger than himself, and his own fear power waning again, Cor lunged at George. But George didn't immediately engage Cor in close combat. He had the size advantage, but that didn't mean he could win in melee. Cor's giant snake form wasn't an ordinary snake, it wouldn't be easy to defeat. Besides, it was obvious the snake's fangs contained potent venom. So, he unleashed his super magic again, super magic, fairy law. In his dragon form, his life force was immense, allowing him to cast fairy law more than 10 times in a row. He could also replenish his life force by eating trees or absorbing the life force of nearby trees and plants. As a magic dragon, he planned to use magic to weaken him first before engaging in close combat. A massive magic circle appeared above the city, and this time the fairy law was aimed solely at Cor, launching an attack. Cor barely withstood the blow and was about to launch another attack when another magic circle appeared in the sky. Super magic, fairy law, super magic, fairy law, super magic, fairy law. George flew into the air, chanting incantations non-stop, unleashing a barrage of super magic spells at Cor without restraint. Chapter 312 Sealing Cor. After 15 consecutive attempts, George felt that even his dragon body was starting to give out, as each activation had drained a massive amount of his life force. His body's natural healing abilities simply couldn't keep up. Fortunately, while rescuing aliens across the globe, he had already uprooted many 100-meter-tall trees from primeval forests. He took out a small box from his transformation space and used magic to make it open automatically above his dragon head. Trees several people could barely encircle fell from the box and entered his mouth. Activating the wood dragon's ability to absorb life force, he devoured the trees like spicy snacks, quickly replenishing his life force. However, Just as he was about to press his advantage with super magic, he discovered the giant snake on the ground had vanished. "I'm going to eat you," a deafening roar echoed from behind. Turning around, he saw that Cure had taken advantage of his recovery to appear above him, opening his mouth to swallow him whole. Normal pythons can swallow creatures 10 times their own size, let alone the terrifying giant python that Cure had transformed into. Its mouth was several times larger than George's entire dragon body, and it possessed a power that could devour everything. George tried to flap his wings to dodge, but found that the suction force from Cure's mouth was so terrifying that he couldn't break free at all. He tried to use apparition, but failed again. The devouring power emanating from Cure's mouth had frozen the surrounding space. "Luckily, I've weakened quite a bit, otherwise I really would have been swallowed up." He flapped his wings forcefully to maintain his stability, and looking at the serpentine mouth that blotted out the sky, he opened his mouth wide and began to condense a fireball. Fierce fire, demonic fire, dragon fire, plus wood to fuel it, and lightning to accelerate it. "Since you like to eat so much, then turn into a roasted snake." Super electromagnetic great fireball, a black, red, and blue fireball with a diameter of several thousand meters condensed on his dragon mouth, and then shot into the mouth of the giant snake that was about to be swallowed, accompanied by lightning. This was his strongest attack, created based on the characteristics of his current form, a massive fireball condensed from various flames, unleashing all his magic power at once. He estimated it could destroy a planet, if not completely obliterate it, but at least sink a continent. Its destructive power was even greater than the fairy law. If Cure were at his peak, he wasn't confident he could defeat him with this attack. However, Cure's strength was greatly diminished due to previous weakenings, and he was already seriously injured after being hit by over a dozen fairy laws. A closer look revealed that most of the serpent scales had fallen off. Not good. Sensing the immense energy contained within the lightning-wrapped fireball, Cure was shocked and immediately tried to shut his mouth and dodge. Unfortunately, accelerated like a railgun, the kilometer-diameter fireball, imbued with the attributes of fiery curse, demonic darkness, and dragonfire, had already entered his mouth, throat, and stomach. Boom! A massive explosion resounded from within the giant serpent's belly, and terrifying flames engulfed Cure from the inside out, causing him to let out a deafening scream. His body sizzled and dripped with oil, and even with divine power, he couldn't completely extinguish the flames. However, George was still relentless. He grabbed Cure's vital spot with his dragon claws and ripped it open, then opened his mouth and continued to breathe fire into that spot. In his dragon form, his magic power was immense, and his wizard bloodline couldn't quickly replenish it, but he would breathe as much as he could, his main strategy being a slow, gentle roasting, determined to thoroughly roast him. Cure tried to resist, but his body was too weak. The moment his serpent had turned, George slapped him to the ground with a wing. Thor and the others, who had joined forces to defeat the 8 Heavenly Hammer Venerables, had originally intended to come to help, but seeing the scene before them, they were all frozen in place in shock. To be honest, they were no longer afraid of Cure. In fact, they felt a pang of sympathy for him. It was too pitiful, his entire body was about to be charred. It was precisely because of this that Cure, lacking the replenishment of the power of fear, had no chance to resist. Seeing no chance of turning the tide, and knowing that continuing would only lead to further humiliation, Cure reverted from his serpent form to human form, while George, seeing this, also reverted from his dragon form to human form. "You can't kill me. As long as the divine realm exists, I will not die. Even Odin cannot truly kill me." Lying on the ground, his body charred like charcoal, Cure glared at George and said viciously, "Just because I can't kill you now doesn't mean I can't in the future." George walked to Cure and took out a pre-prepared nesting doll, covered in various sealing spells, from his transformation space. Seal. Using the nesting doll sealing technique created by Merlin, George sealed the heavily injured and weakened Cure inside the nesting doll. Cure, Odin, and Hela were likely beings of the same level. They had all comprehended the origin of the divine realm dimension, connecting themselves to the divine realm. Without destroying the divine realm, they could not be completely killed. Of the three, Odin was the strongest. Since Odin couldn't destroy Asgard, he sealed Cure and Hela to Earth. His current strength was still a step below the three. He could only defeat Cure because Cure was on Earth, too far from Asgard to unleash his full power. Therefore, he couldn't kill Cure on Earth either. But that was only now. In the future, as he grew stronger and acquired more methods, he would naturally find a way to completely eliminate Cure. He's already sealed here. Should we take him back to Asgard? Seeing Thor and the others approach, George handed them the nesting dolls. However, Thor didn't reach for them, but scratched his head and said, "Father said we can't take him back to Asgard, otherwise he'll absorb Asgard's power and recover quickly. It's best to find a way to seal him on Earth. In that case, I'll keep an eye on him. Otherwise, if someone with ulterior motives finds him and releases him, it'll be another problem." George's eyes darted around, and he put the nesting doll that sealed Kur into his dressing space. Kur is at least on par with Odin, capable of absorbing the power of fear to transform into a giant serpent. His soul is powerful, and perhaps in the future, when he becomes stronger, it can be used to forge top-tier magical artifacts. Then I'll have to trouble you, George. This time, it's all thanks to your help in defeating and sealing Kur. Asgard owes you a huge favor. I will report this truthfully to Father God when I return. Thor nodded solemnly. Indeed, besides George, he really didn't feel comfortable sealing Kur anywhere else. With George's terrifying strength, even if Kur managed to escape, he would be driven back. There was no safer place than with him. Chapter 313 George, the Subfather. Loki, you? After confirming the outcome with George, Thor turned to look for his brother Loki, only to find that Loki had already taken the opportunity to retreat back into the magical rift with the frost giants. "Goodbye, my foolish brother," Loki waved in the magical rift and then disappeared along with it. He didn't want to be dragged back to Asgard and imprisoned by Thor. He did help out this time. George smiled and patted Thor on the shoulder. Actually, with his power, he had already noticed Loki sneaking away, but he didn't stop him. According to the Ancient One, Loki from one world had become a story god above the multiverse level. Since they were both Loki, he naturally had to be a little careful and try not to make things too tense. He wasn't inherently bad, he just went astray. I'll consult with Father God when I get back, and then I'll make a special trip to Jotunheim to find him. Thor nodded, then said, "We'll return to Asgard first. I'll come back after things are settled." As the Rainbow Bridge descended, Thor led the Asgardian army away. At this moment, Steve, Tony, and the others also arrived, escorting the 8 Hammer Masters. However, the atmosphere among them wasn't particularly harmonious. The Hydra leader, the blue-skinned monster, and the Killian 7 were all being escorted by Tony and the others, while Black Panther's side was being protected by Black Panther and his bodyguards, preventing Tony's side from interfering. Mr. George, my father was misled into doing this. He was also a victim. Please forgive him. Black Panther T'Challa put away his suit, handed his unconscious father to the bald bodyguards, gave George the highest Wakandan salute, and then explained with a face full of respect. After defeating and knocking out T'Chaka, they originally planned to return to Wakanda immediately. However, Tony and the others stopped them because T'Chaka, as the Hammer Master, had killed many people in this battle, and they couldn't just leave like that. Normally, given their style, they wouldn't care about such things and would simply forcibly take T'Chaka away. At worst, they would fight. As the most technologically advanced civilization on Earth, Wakanda feared no other country. However, after witnessing the battle between George and Kur, they dared not do that. They knew very well that if George wanted to, he could single-handedly wipe out the entire Wakanda. Whether he's been bewitched or not, we need to investigate first, Steve said, stepping forward. Your matters aren't urgent. Wait a moment. George didn't deal with it immediately. Instead, he took to the air and waved his wand, casting a series of restoration charms on the area near Washington and Sokovia, which had become a land island. Under the effect of the restoration charms, the collapsed buildings returned to normal. This scene was broadcast live to people all over the world. At that moment, the same thought surged in their minds. This is truly a miracle. For George, repairing the collapsed buildings was a matter of course, giving those who were still alive but trapped underneath a better chance of survival and rescue. Of course, he wouldn't go and treat everyone individually. There were too many injured, and even if he intervened, it would take too long, too much of a waste of time. He could rescue people incidentally, or for some greater benefit, but he wouldn't do it solely for the sake of rescue. Otherwise, with his current abilities, he could cure most diseases in the world. Would he do nothing but travel from hospital to hospital treating patients every day? That's a doctor's job, not his. Back on the ground, another Quinjet fighter jet appeared. It was Callison leading the SHIELD team from the New York base, who had just arrived. I'll leave the rest to you. As for the reward for your help, I haven't decided yet. I'll let you know when I do." After greeting Cowlson, and seeing the reporters approaching, George took out a box and packed everyone, including the Wakanda spaceship and the 8 hammers, into it. He then paraded back to the school and released everyone. He was very satisfied with this operation. First, he successfully defeated and sealed Clover, making Asgard owe him another huge favor, and it also served as a test of his current strength. According to the Marvel Universe's tires from his previous life, he felt he should be barely at the Skyfather level. The Marvel Universe normally has 6 major tires, but these aren't fixed. The strength varies greatly depending on the universe and state. The most basic is the Earth level, where destructive power is still within Earth's range. Most members of the Avengers are at this level. Above that is the Skyfather level, where Hela, Kur, Thanos, the Ancient One, and Odin are roughly at this level. However, the strength of the Ancient One and Odin is not fixed. The Ancient One has 3 sanctums on Earth, and Odin has his own territory in Asgard, both reaching the peak of the celestial level, or even just beginning to glimpse the threshold of the Multiverse level. Above the celestial level is the Multiverse level, where most of the celestials and many-dimensional demons are roughly at this level within their own dimensions. Above that is the Multiverse level, where powerful beings can devour and destroy a universe in an instant. The most famous example is probably Chthon, the source of Scarlet Witch's power and the god of dark magic. Then there are the 5 cosmic entities. One level higher than the Multiverse level is the Megaverse level, where the Living Tribunal, which manages all universes, is at this level. Finally, there is the OAA, the creator of the entire Marvel Universe. This is basically his understanding based on information from his previous life, though its accuracy is uncertain, as he is still far, far away from those higher levels. In his current state, he should be accurately described as a sub-celestial level, capable of defeating Kul, who was banished to Earth, but still unable to defeat Odin in Asgard. Secondly, this operation once again demonstrated his power to the world, prompting high-ranking officials in various governments and those messy organizations to wake up and not cause him trouble. Otherwise, your country could disappear from the world map in no time. This can resolve many unnecessary conflicts. Thirdly, after this incident, all superhumans worldwide should no longer doubt the Superhuman Academy's ability to protect them and will truly trust the school, leading to more teachers and students joining. Although his current strength is already formidable, the world is also complex, and sometimes he might actually attract some surprises that could be helpful to him. For example, the Inhuman Rena, who can see fragments of the future, is quite useful. Chapter 314 Extremist Virus. Alright, I've checked. They were indeed bewitched by the power of the god of Clover, not acting voluntarily, George said after reading the memories of the 8 chosen heavenly hammer venerables. However, even without being bewitched, these Hydra leaders have killed countless people. They can be released. Several flames flickered from his hands, engulfing Original Sin, Baron Zemo, Baron Stratholm, Lady Hydra, and Hive, instantly incinerating them to ashes. These guys were of no value to him. On the contrary, leaving them unattended might have caused unnecessary trouble. It was better to kill them all. Seeing the 5 Hydra members instantly burned to ashes, T'Challa and his guards couldn't help but swallow hard. Mr. George, what about my father? Core has been sealed away. Your father is only temporarily unconscious, he'll be fine once he wakes up. By the way, I heard that your Wakanda has a vibranium mountain range, and the captain's shield is even made from your vibranium. We're kind of destined to meet, George interrupted T'Challa. I need some vibranium recently. Don't worry, I'll pay the market price, I won't take it for free, Mr. George, you defeated Cure and saved my father, which means you saved the king of Wakanda. We are willing to give you some vibranium as a token of our gratitude. Please accept it. T'Challa had been studying in New York and was very knowledgeable about the outside world. He was also very intelligent. He wanted to tell George that Wakanda's vibranium would never be sold for any price, nor would it be allowed to leave the country. Everything in Wakanda was self-sufficient, and they didn't need outside money at all. But he didn't say it, because of George's strength, because his father T'Chaka was still with George, and because 5 Hydra agents had just been burnt to ashes. Clearly, George wasn't the kind of easygoing person who would let things slide. If he wasn't willing to pay some vibranium now, they probably wouldn't be able to take his father away, and their very survival would be in question. How could I possibly accept this? George's lips curled into a slight smile. But since you've put it that way, it would seem hypocritical of me to refuse. So, let's do it this way. You take your father and leave first. When I need him, I'll go to Wakanda to get it from you. I know exactly where it is. Okay. T'Challa forced a smile and nodded, suppressing the twitching of his facial muscles. He hadn't expected the other party to even know the location of Wakanda. If he disagreed, they might really be wiped out. Watching Black Panther lead the unconscious old king and his guards away in the spaceship, George turned to the unconscious Killian. Stop playing dead. You saw what happened. I'm debating whether to get rid of you. Although you were also bewitched by Clover, you've experimented on many people before, so you're not innocent. He had used a resurrection spell on Killian after reading his memories, so Killian was now conscious, just pretending to be unconscious. Sure enough, upon hearing George's words, Killian immediately opened his eyes. Don't kill me. My initial intention in conducting those experiments was simply to allow disabled people to regenerate limbs, to benefit society. Those who participated in the experiments were all disabled veterans. They all volunteered. Is that so? But what I see in your memories is different from what you say. What I see is that you want to cultivate a large number of extremist virus warriors through experiments, first to take revenge on Tony, then to control America, and thus control the world, becoming the most powerful man in the world. As for allowing disabled people to regenerate limbs, that seems to be Dr. Maya Hansen's goal, not yours. George directly exposed Killian's lies. At this moment, Tony also spoke up with a face full of doubt. I say, who exactly are you? Why do you hate me so much? I don't remember offending you, do I? Stark, you arrogant jerk, you still haven't remembered me. Upon hearing Tony's words, Killian was instantly enraged, his whole body radiating flames, and he was about to go and fight Tony again, but George casually used magic to freeze him in place. His name is Aldrich Killian. George briefly explained the situation. Killian idolized Tony Stark. On New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1999, while Tony was celebrating in Bern, Switzerland, Killian went to see him, hoping to get investment in his extremist virus project under Pioneer Technologies. However, Tony was in a hurry to sleep with Dr. Maya and casually told Killian to wait for him on the rooftop. Killian waited a long time in the cold night, but Tony never appeared. Realizing he had been tricked, he was so depressed he almost committed suicide. But he eventually came to his senses and decided to continue developing his project and then get revenge on Tony for his insult. So the next day, he found Dr. Maya, who had been slept with by Tony but hadn't invested in his experiments. Using the pretext of helping her secure investment and jointly helping disabled people, he got Dr. Maya to help him improve the extremist virus. Okay, I'm sorry, my personality was pretty bad back then, and I hurt you. After hearing this, Tony recalled what happened 12 years ago and had some impression of Killian, so he apologized to Killian. But Killian was clearly not appreciative, and Wolverine, standing nearby, even joked, your personality is actually pretty bad now, not much better. He doesn't deserve to die, so let's lock him up for now. Letting him out would just be trouble. Finally, George thought for a moment and threw Killian into the box. He couldn't just let Killian go like that. If he handed him over to the government, he was afraid the government would create a large number of extremist virus soldiers to form an army and cause trouble. So he would keep him here for now and deal with him later. Actually, he was still somewhat interested in the extremist virus. The extremist virus could enhance physical strength, which would be somewhat useful to him, but not much, as his physical body was already very strong. The extremist virus could allow the body to withstand extremely high temperatures, even making the body as hot as magma and spewing flames, which could slightly enhance his fire magic. If it were just the first two, he wouldn't be that interested. What he values most is the last ability, extraordinary self-healing. Even if he loses an arm or leg, as long as his body isn't severely mutilated, it can regenerate in seconds. Frankly, despite his current physical strength, even transforming into a dragon, if he lost an arm, it wouldn't grow back on its own. At most, he could use healing magic to reattach it. The Harry Potter world does have potions for limb regeneration, but they require magical ingredients from that world, the raw materials of which are unavailable in other worlds. Therefore, he's considering whether to inject himself with the extremist virus, which would significantly enhance his survival ability. Chapter 315 Advancement to Level 5 Superpower User. George, what's this guy? After dealing with Killian, only a creature with blue skin, clearly not a normal human, remained. Everyone was curious about its identity. George simply put it away in a box and explained, "This guy is called Sisha, an Atlantean, Atlantis." Everyone exchanged bewildered glances. Wakanda had already surprised them, and now Atlantis had appeared. Just how many hidden races were there on Earth? They are a race that lives in the water. Lock them up for now, we'll deal with them later, George explained briefly and tossed Sisha into the box as well. Through Sisha's memories, he discovered that the Atlantis of this universe was different from the one in the movies of his previous life. In the movies, Atlantis was a 16th century Mesoamerican Mayan civilization that, due to persecution by colonists, was forced to consume herbs influenced by vibranium, gaining the ability to live underwater and thus creating an underwater nation. But this Atlantis was an ancient civilization that appeared on Earth long ago. Their current king, Namor, is a half-human, half-breed father of an Atlantean princess and a mutant before World War II. He possesses the Atlantean's ability to live in water and is also a mutant capable of flight. Haisha, a pure-blooded Atlantean, considers Namor a bastard unworthy of the throne and has been plotting to overthrow Namor's rule, launching several unsuccessful rebellions. If Namor cares about Haisha's life or death, he will naturally seek him out. If not, he can simply kill him after a while. He's not a good person anyway. After everything was settled, everyone dispersed, and George resumed his magical research. He had nearly mastered alchemy, and next, he planned to combine magic from various worlds to make the entire school fly, creating a floating city. He also planned to create all the magical items, including the key to the gate, the magic school bus, and the magic car. As for the aftermath of this major event, the major reshuffle at the top of the US government, global speculation about the origins of the Asgardian soldiers and the Frost Giants, the fanatical worship of George and the various superheroes, and even the shift in the entire world order, he was concerned about the consequences. George didn't care much about any of this. He now possessed enough power to disregard the opinions of ordinary people. Meanwhile, in a secret base outside Academy City, George, who had been researching the Puritan magic in Sherry Cromwell's memories, had also made significant progress. For him, while researching time magic to rescue the fairy tale members was important, time magic wasn't something that could be mastered quickly. Therefore, he couldn't dedicate all his clone's energy to it. Currently, according to his allocation, his fairy tale clone focused entirely on time magic research, and his Marvel main body also devoted most of its energy to it. As for his clones and other worlds, they continued to research the magic of those worlds, conducting deeper explorations. Perhaps these explorations would yield new clues to time magic, and the overall improvement in magic level would also provide a boost to his time magic research. His clone in Academy City continued to control Kahara Itsuki to help him develop his superpowers while simultaneously researching the large amount of Puritan magic he had obtained from Sherry. Sherry is an important member of the Puritan Church of Necessary Evil. Having grown up within the Puritan community, she possesses a solid foundation in magic. Besides her expertise in puppet magic, she has read many different types of spellbooks. After all, knowing the type of magic used by different enemies and its underlying principles is crucial for effective countermeasures. George quickly absorbed this magical knowledge, first learning Sherry's puppet magic, then various rune and spell magic, many of which surprised him greatly. For example, there's the red and blue flame sword, a magical weapon formed from runes, a fire giant that can be infinitely resurrected within its rune range and automatically track enemies until they are destroyed, a repel the scoundrel rune array, similar to a muggle blocking charm, capable of dispelling ordinary people, the red spell, a long-range, missile-like targeted attack, the black spell, creating a large water wall to protect the city, and the reasoning 4 array, which searches for enemy positions within a radius of about 3 kilometers centered on the user. The reason he was able to understand and learn so much magic so quickly was mainly because these spells shared many similar magical principles with those he had learned in other worlds. Although there are many differences between the spells of different worlds, with a foundation, it's easy to master them with slight modifications. Furthermore, because of his magical background from other worlds, he was able to modify some spells to increase their power. For example, the flame sword, normally composed of flames at 3000 degrees Celsius, could be enhanced by incorporating 3 types of flames, magical fire, fiery blaze, and dragonfire, to increase its special attack. When struck, it wouldn't just burn from the flames but also inflict curses and darkness. Moreover, it didn't just absorb external magic, He could also inject a large amount of his own magic to make the flame sword larger and more powerful. As for the rune-inscribed flame giant, it required pre-attaching special rune-inscribed talismans around it. If the talismans were removed or soaked in water, the inscriptions would become blurred, affecting or even causing the spell to disappear. Then he could use the principles of fairy tales world-building techniques to arrange those runes with magic, so that they wouldn't be detected or destroyed. It's about time to go to the lab. After checking the time, George apparated and disappeared from his spot, reappearing at the entrance of the Hound Corps base. As usual, he entered the lab under Kahara's guidance, lay down on the machine, and began injecting the corresponding drugs and using various high-tech equipment to develop his superpowers. However, today seemed different from the past. In the past, he did feel that his superpowers improved slightly after each experiment, but not significantly. But this time, he felt as if the barrier that had always been in front of him had suddenly been pierced, and his superpowers had increased dramatically, as he had his mental calculation ability. Finally, I've broken through to level 5. It's time to visit the various churches. But before that, I should first find out more about that chairman. Getting up from the machine, looking at the level 5 superpower standard detected on it, George thought to himself. Chapter 316 The Hanging Chairman. Direction Manifestation. Aleister Crowley, leaving the Hound unit base, George, now invisible, began casting a tracking spell on Chairman Aleister, then flew towards the 7th school district. According to his intelligence, Academy City could only catalyze superpowers to level 5 at most. He was already at level 5, meaning Academy City was useless to him. Since his superpower had reached its limit, he could only seek magic. He couldn't destroy Index's automatic book magic defense system, and therefore couldn't obtain the 100,000 grimoires. So, the best way was to infiltrate the various churches and directly search their libraries for magic books. Or, he could secretly take down some high-ranking members of the churches and directly read their memories. But before that, he was curious about what kind of person Chairman Aleister Crowley was, the one who created Academy City, a place where science and magic could coexist. On one hand, he always felt that the chairman's shadow was behind many events, and he wanted to make some contact to find out his secrets. On the other hand, he felt that the chairman, as the highest leader and founder of the Academy City, might have some plans to help level 5 ability users evolve to level 6. Level 6 ability users, also known as absolute ability users, are said to be able to comprehend the will of gods with a non-god's body, and their strength is comparable to that of a demon god. In Sherry's memories, demon gods are magicians who have comprehended the true meaning of magic, completely mastered magic, and elevated themselves to the realm of gods through special rituals. They possess infinite power and can easily destroy an entire world. According to his understanding, in the Marvel Universe, their strength is roughly at the level of a single universe, capable of easily destroying a universe. Therefore, if he could advance to level 6 ability users, his strength would increase significantly. You must know that even after he fully unleashed his power after transforming into a dragon, he was only at the level of a sub-father. So it's this building. It doesn't even have a single window. What a strange building. Following the tracking spell, George quickly found Aleister's location, a windowless building in the center of the 7th district. He didn't enter through the main entrance downstairs, but went directly to the rooftop. Alahara, he used a lock-picking spell to open the mechanical door on the roof and stealthily descended the stairs to the lower floors. Soon, he arrived at a large hall on one of the floors. Like the building itself, this hall felt strange. The floor and walls resembled enlarged integrated circuit boards, and in the center of the hall was something like a life device. Inside the life device was a thin man with long silver hair, hanging upside down. Around the life device were various virtual monitors. This guy is Aleister Crowley, the creator of Academy City and its chairman. Seeing his tracking spell pointing directly at the man in the life device, he knew this hanged man was his target for today. He seems like an ordinary person. Logically, someone who could create Academy City shouldn't be an ordinary person, but he couldn't sense any energy fluctuations from the hanged man's body. But the next second, he dismissed his foolish thought. That's strange. Why is it that as a clone, your abilities have caught up with the original, and you can even use magic? Could it be that a demon has possessed your body? But that doesn't make sense either. There's no demonic aura within you. How could this be? Aleister, hanging upside down inside the divine device, suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the invisible George. Powerful magic instantly suppressed George, rendering him completely immobile. Only then did he realize that this chairman was no ordinary person. He had simply concealed his aura so well that even Aleister hadn't noticed a flaw. Moreover, the chairman who created the Academy City's technology side was a terrifyingly powerful magician, whose magical power surpassed that of any magician Aleister he had ever seen. The mere suppression of magic power rendered him immobile, even preventing him from using apparition to escape. However, he wasn't entirely without options. If he transformed into his dragon form using an imagus, significantly increasing his strength, he could still break free from Aleister's magical suppression and apparition away. But he didn't do that immediately. Because the other party hadn't attacked him, but merely suppressed his movements. And frankly, after discovering that Aleister was actually such a powerful mage, his interest in him grew even stronger. Such a powerful mage couldn't possibly be unknown in history. Yet, no one outside knew Aleister was a mage. They only knew he founded Academy City, a technologically advanced city of superhumans, rivaling the magical world. Everyone assumed he was a top scientist or a level 5 superhuman. So who was Aleister really? And what was his purpose in founding Academy City? Although I don't know how to explain it to you, I'm definitely not possessed by a demon, that's true. If you were possessed by a demon, you wouldn't only have this much power. Aleister withdrew his suppression of George, his gaze filled with interest. Then who are you? You shouldn't belong to this world. He couldn't unleash his power for too long, otherwise, he'd be in trouble if discovered. He had always stayed in the biopod, controlling the others in Academy City to achieve his goals, never acting personally, all to avoid revealing his identity. Because of what happened back then, he had been hunted by the entire magical world and the great demon Krenzo. If Clone 9981 hadn't suddenly intruded upon him, he wouldn't have risked unleashing his full power to suppress it. However, upon closer inspection, he discovered that Clone 9981's situation was highly abnormal. Not only did it possess magical power comparable to that of a typical saint, but the magic it used was also strange. It wasn't the modern magic he had developed and extended, it was magic completely foreign to this world. Why did he conclude it didn't belong to this world? He was generally familiar with the magic of this world, and his own superpowers would naturally conflict with its magic. Since Clone 9981 was a superhuman, it couldn't possibly use the magic of this world. Therefore, Clone 9981's essence might not belong to this world. Only beings like demons, monsters, or angels would exhibit similar characteristics. However, he couldn't sense any of these three traits in Clone 9981. This puzzled him greatly and piqued his interest in Clone 9981. Chapter 317 The Dragon from Another World. I do not belong to this world, but the situation is complicated, and you might not understand even if I explained it. George looked at the chairman hanging upside down in front of him, stroked his chin, and sat on the ground, asking in return, "Then who are you? I could feel the powerful magic you just unleashed. You are definitely a very famous magician." A magician, yet the chairman who founded the Academy City and the system of superhumans. This reminds me of someone. Having acquired Sherry's memories as a Puritan intelligence officer, he naturally knew a great deal about the magical history of this world and many important figures in that history. One magician in particular left a deep impression on him. His magic name was Beast 666, his real name Edward Alexander, hailed as the greatest magician of the 20th century. The man closest to a demon god. Currently, about 20% of the world's magicians are considered his disciples, and about 50% of magicians have been influenced by him to some extent. He is also one of the founders of modern magic. However, it is said that this magician had a very bad character and later suddenly betrayed magic for science, becoming a target of the entire magical world. According to historical records, Edward Alexander was ambushed and killed in the English countryside on December 1, 1947. Footprints revealed. Edward Alexander. Verifying his hypothesis was actually quite simple. George immediately cast a tracking spell. Sure enough, the tracking spell pointed directly to the chairman hanging upside down in front of him. Whether it's a name, nickname, or alias, as long as it belongs to that person, the tracking spell can help you find them, unless they are dead or sealed away. Interesting magic. No spells, magic circles, or runes, no need to imitate miracles, yet it can accurately find the person you're looking for. However, now that you know my identity, you should know that I won't let you leave here alive. A cold glint flashed in Allister's eyes. He hadn't expected that Clo 9981, based solely on his recently unleashed magic power, had guessed his true identity and even verified it with special magic. George, however, showed no fear upon hearing this, simply smiling and saying, "Actually, there's no need for that. I'm not interested in your past, nor in why you established the Academy City. I won't reveal your true identity to the church. What I'm interested in is how to improve my strength, such as advancing to level 6 ability user, or learning the magic of your world." He dared to directly reveal the chairman's identity, naturally indicating he had some confidence and a plan. "How about we cooperate? Given your current state, you probably don't want to expose your identity. I can handle some things for you, and you only need to teach me your magic." This would be a win-win situation for both of us. Since Allister was Edward, one of the founders of modern magic, why would he bother going to the church? This guy probably knew all the magic in this world. If this guy was willing to teach, he might learn more magic than those 103,000 spellbooks. "You're right, but keeping you alive puts me in danger, and my plans become uncertain. Perhaps I should kill you, that would be more secure." Allister seemed unwilling to accept George's suggestion. For him, if Misaka 9981's identity was unknown, and he already knew her true identity, even if she was quite strong and could be used to his advantage, it wasn't entirely safe. The safest course of action now was to kill Misaka 9981 directly to eliminate any future trouble and continue proceeding steadily according to the previous plan. "The key is, you probably won't be able to kill me so easily. Exposing your aura by fighting me would be more dangerous for you," George calmly replied to the growing killing intent emanating from Allister. Allister smiled upon hearing this. "I don't think our battle will last long, just a few seconds will be enough." Even if Misaka 9981 possessed the strength of a saint, he wouldn't need many moves at full power to expose his aura too much. That's not necessarily true. George cast a temporary unseen expansion charm on the entire hall, instantly increasing the space several hundred times. Animagus. The next second, he activated Animagus transformation, his body rapidly expanding into a 500-meter-long dragon. In this form, both his physical body and magical power were greatly enhanced. Most importantly, the dragon's magic resistance was exceptionally high. Even if Allister was strong, he was still a mage, and his magical attacks would be significantly less effective. If that's the case, do you still think you can easily defeat me? And this isn't even my limit, it's just that this space can no longer support my size changes. So, I think you can still consider my suggestion. We can cooperate and achieve a win-win situation." George's dragon-like voice echoed throughout the hall. "His true form is actually a dragon." Allister stared in disbelief at the over 500-meter-tall dragon before him. It wasn't that the dragon George had transformed into was stronger than him. Rather, dragons, as fantastical creatures, simply didn't exist in this world. This world was constructed by superimposing numerous religious and mythological phases onto the physical universe, the fundamental physical phase. Magic could manipulate energy from other phases, so sometimes the effects didn't obey the laws of physics. But essentially, this world didn't have those mythical creatures, it was just that one could imitate them with magic and create energy bodies similar to magical dragons. Therefore, this real dragon life form before him clearly did not belong to this world. It could only be from another phase. Not a demon, not a devil, not an angel, but a dragon. That's fine. His intuition told him that even if he went all out and managed to defeat this dragon, he would definitely expose his presence. Furthermore, their battle would likely cause significant damage to Academy City. "Alright, you've convinced me. I agree to this cooperation." After a moment, Allister made a new decision. Indeed, Misaka 9981's threat influenced his decision, but more importantly, he knew that his plans might be subject to strong interference from many uncertainties. If Misaka 9981's existence and the strength she displayed could truly be used to his advantage, many things would be much easier. Moreover, if the plan proceeded smoothly, his identity might be completely exposed before long. As long as it wasn't a demon or a devil, then cooperation was possible. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318 Magical Armor. Chairman, it'll be a pleasure to cooperate. George breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this and reverted to human form. If Aleister had insisted on fighting, even in his transformed state from when he fought Clover, he probably wouldn't have won and would have had to flee in disarray. He was quite satisfied with the current outcome. He no longer needed to travel the world to find churches to learn magic. He could directly learn from this master who had already touched upon the essence of magic, which would greatly improve the school's efficiency. In fact, he felt that if the chairman in front of him could undergo a specific ritual, he might even be able to directly advance from human to demon god. Since you're not clone number 9981, how should I address you from now on? After deciding to cooperate, the killing intent in Aleister's heart dissipated, and a smile reappeared on his face. Then call me George, George replied. Could you reserve a room for me in this building? That way, it'll be convenient for me to come and ask you about magic anytime. Of course, no problem. I'll have someone prepare a suitable room for you in a bit. Aleister had no objection to George's request. On the contrary, he also hoped that George could stay in the building. Despite agreeing to cooperate, he wasn't entirely at ease with George. Knowing George's identity, he felt more secure having him under his watchful eye. Mainly, his surveillance system throughout Academy City, Skyline, was useless against George. Thus, George stayed comfortably in the building for half a month. During this time, he learned a great deal of magic from Aleister, gaining a deeper understanding of the nature of magic in this world. It was no wonder he was a figure who had participated in the invention of the modern magic system. Almost any question he raised could be perfectly solved, and he even derived a great deal of magical knowledge from it. Although the magic systems of different worlds differed, their essence was largely the same. While understanding the essence of magic in this world, he also gained considerable inspiration from his research into the magic systems of other worlds. He had previously been trying to integrate the magic systems of various worlds, discarding the dross and retaining the essence to create a magic system more suitable for himself. However, he had been learning only the surface of magic, merely imitating without delving into its essence, resulting in very slow progress. The main reason is that in other worlds, very few wizards can reach Aleister's level. Relying solely on his own comprehension, his progress is naturally slow. In the Harry Potter world, the strongest wizard is Dumbledore, but to say that Dumbledore has grasped the essence of magic in that world is inaccurate. The gap is still significant. In the world of wizarding apprentices, he was mentored by Balthazar, whose skill level is now inferior. While Merlin and Morgana in that world might have grasped some essence, given their creation of numerous spells, it's even less likely. In the fairy tale world, most magic is self-taught. Guild mages primarily learn magic in battle, with few diligently studying its essence. They rely entirely on emotions to unleash their potential and then constantly improve through combat. It's said that in the era of dragons, there were many magic academies dedicated to researching and learning magic. But they were all destroyed in the war against the dragons. In Middle-earth, he is currently building an academy with the elves, and perhaps later will have the opportunity to study the essence of magic in that world together. However, he felt that to conduct in-depth research, he needed to go to Valinor, where the gods resided. That day, George was in his room studying the spirit armor of this world. To George, spirit armor was simply magical items and weapons, except they differed from ordinary magical items. The spirit armor in this world was basically a replica of the divine artifacts from various mythologies, imbued with magical abilities. Although replicas, they did indeed possess similar abilities based on the characteristics of the divine artifacts in the mythologies. However, the more powerful the divine artifact in the mythology, the harder it was to create a replica spirit armor. Like the one he had encountered last time, Index, who was carrying 103,000 mages, wore a luxurious pure white silk nun's habit embroidered with the gold thread, a top-tier spirit armor that the Puritans had spent a long time and effort creating. The nun's habit was called the Mobile Church, a complete replica of the Shroud of Turin, the cloth wrapped around the saint's body when he was pierced by the spear of Longinus, containing all the essential elements of a church. Theoretically, Index, dressed in that nun's habit, possessed nuclear-level defense. Even if a nuclear bomb exploded at point-blank range, she wouldn't suffer a single injury. George thought that if he could master this magical technique and become powerful in the future, he might be able to replicate some powerful magical artifacts based on the mythological systems he was familiar with. For example, the various powerful magical weapons from the investiture of the gods and journey to the west. Not to mention manifesting 100% of their power, even just 1/10,000th of their power would make him laugh in his dreams. The mythological system here doesn't necessarily have to be Western mythology. Replicating artifacts based on the mythological system the creator understands would achieve a similar effect. Because these things don't originally exist, magic makes them materialize, which is what magicians in this world often call the idol theory. Miss George, the chairman requests your presence. Just as George was engrossed in his research, there was a knock on the door. George checked the time and realized it wasn't his usual time to consult about magic. It seems he wants me to do something at this time. There were actually some conditions attached to his cooperation with Aleister. The two sides are not entirely in a state of mutual trust. Although Aleister is guiding George in learning the magic of this world, he is not teaching without reservation, only teaching him the modern magic system he created, excluding the ancient magic. Therefore, George has his own requirements for working for Aleister. He will not engage in indiscriminate killing and destruction, and he will try his best to complete the mission, but he cannot guarantee success if the enemy is too strong. If he cannot defeat them, his own life is the priority. He needs to understand the content and general information of the mission, and cannot proceed blindly. Aleister does not trust him, and he does not trust Aleister either. What if it is a mission where death is certain? He would be in deep trouble. Aleister also requires that during his mission outside the building, he must not obstruct the surveillance of Skyloop to prevent him from informing on George to the church. This is of course not a problem for George, as he had no intention of informing on George in the first place. Chapter 319 The Great Star Festival begins. George, I need your help with something. Aleister, suspended upside down in his life support device, smiled at George in the hall. George waved his hand. No need for such formalities. You've taught me very well these past few days, and I will naturally fulfill my duty. Just tell me what to do, and the dangers and details involved. Academy City is about to hold the Great Star Festival, and two mages with ulterior motives will be sneaking in, one of whom is a high-ranking member of the Roman Catholic Church. They seem to want to use this event to trade for a spirit weapon called the Thornhorn Sword. The High Priestess of the Puritan Church, Laura Stewart, is worried that the Roman Catholic Church is using the Thornhorn Sword, a spirit weapon capable of killing saints, to attack the Puritan Church. Therefore, she wants our help to stop this transaction. Aleister explained the situation. He didn't want to get involved in these matters between the Roman Catholic Church and the Puritan Church. To him, all mages in the world were enemies. He wanted to create a world without magic. However, he was nominally cooperating with the Puritan Church and couldn't refuse. Taking advantage of this incident, he could also train Tuma Kamajau, so he agreed. So, do you need me to kill those two mages? George's face showed a hint of interest. He had recently been studying magic related to spirit weapon creation, so he naturally knew about the top-tier spirit weapon, the Spikesword. The Spikesword's actual prototype was the famous Spear of Longinus, the spear that pierced Jesus, thus having a special effect on saints in this world. As long as a target was seen, regardless of distance, this spirit weapon could be activated to kill a saint, but it only worked on saints, not others. Therefore, it was also known as the most evil spirit weapon. It was said to have been lost long ago. In this world, saint wasn't a title for a type of mage, but specifically referred to someone who, like Jesus, had received the power of a divine child. Of course, the strength of ordinary saints in this world could be considered among the top tier, like a magical nuclear weapon, often capable of single-handedly conquering a fully armed modern city. They possessed physical characteristics similar to divine children and could use some of their power. Their physical bodies are incredibly strong, their movement speed surpasses the speed of sound, their close combat strength is unparalleled, and they possess immense magical power, making their spells far more powerful than those of ordinary mages. Currently, the entire world has fewer than 20 saints combined. If the Roman Catholic Church were to obtain a weapon like the Spike Sword, specifically designed to counter saints, then the Puritan saints would be in danger. No need, Aleister smiled. A student council member from Academy City will cooperate with a Puritan mage to stop this transaction. Your role is just in case. If they can't stop the transaction, then you can intervene. Actually, if it were merely a transaction involving a weapon like the Spike Sword, it wouldn't be a problem. That thing is effective against saints, but ineffective against those with supernatural abilities. So even if they fail to stop it, The Puritan Church would ultimately suffer, and it wouldn't affect his plans. However, he was worried. Did the Roman Catholic Church really come to Academy City just to trade the spike sword? Or was there some larger conspiracy? Just to be on the safe side, it's best to let George handle it. If something really happens, it's inconvenient for him to intervene, and there won't be time to mobilize others. With the strength George demonstrated that day, there shouldn't be any problems. It's a small matter. What are the names of those two mages? George nodded, seemingly indicating there was no danger. Ladovia Lorenzetti and Oriana Thompson. Ladovia Lorenzetti is a true Roman Catholic from the Vatican, holding a high position within the Roman Catholic Church. She's the buyer of the spiked sword. Oriana Thompson is a well-known freelance courier in the magical world, skilled in tracking and counter-tracking magic. She's a courier. But you don't need to worry about their whereabouts. As soon as they enter Academy City, they'll be under my surveillance, and I'll notify you immediately, Aleister explained. Okay, that saves trouble, George nodded. Aleister's Skylink intelligence system possesses 50 million nanometer-sized mechanical monitors, distributed throughout every corner of Academy City. Nothing that happened within Academy City could escape his notice. On the day of the Dehase Festival, George, wearing earpieces, flew out of a windowless building. The earpieces were connected to Aleister, who would notify him to come if the Roman Catholic mages and the mages transporting the spike sword entered Academy City. At that time, Kamar-Taj Tuma, representing the students of Academy City, and the Puritan mages would join forces to stop them. If they failed, he would intervene. He had seen Kamar-Taj Tuma before. He wasn't a level 5 Esper in Academy City, but a level 0 Esper, yet his right hand had the ability to negate all magic and supernatural abilities. It's quite lively. Walking the streets of Academy City, George saw that almost all the students in Academy City were wearing their respective school uniforms, leaving their schools and walking on the streets. There were also many outsiders on the streets, as well as various food stalls. The Dehase Festival was an annual, 7-day, super large-scale comprehensive sports festival held by all schools in Academy City, with over 1.8 million participants. It was one of the few special days in Academy City that was open to the public each year. In other words, people outside Academy City can also visit Academy City for these 7 days. Therefore, many parents come to visit their children during this time. All participating students are organized by school, and all competitions are based on rivalry between ability users. Furthermore, the entire event is televised to a global audience. Although it's a sports meet with very ordinary athletic events, because the use of superpowers is encouraged, but must not harm spectators, thus some high-level ability users are unable to use their abilities, it has almost become a spectacular superpower battle. According to Aleister, the purpose of this is twofold. Firstly, to showcase the strength of ability users, preventing the churches on the magic side from acting rashly, and secondly, to attract talent. Neither of the two mages have arrived yet. You can go and have a look around. Our Academy City's Dehase Festival is quite interesting. Or you can go find your friends. I saw you getting along quite well with Misaka Mikoto and the other kids. Aleister's voice came through the earpiece. George nodded. Okay. Just let me know when they arrive. He knew Aleister wanted him to interact more with the students of Academy City, preferably building deep friendships, so that he would be less likely to betray Academy City and side with a magic faction. Chapter 320 Fantasy Killer. Walking through the bustling streets, George casually bought a few decent-looking street snacks and ate them as he headed towards the large sports field for the Dehase Festival opening ceremony. When he arrived, the field was already packed with students. The opening ceremony had reached its final stage, the student oath-taking. Pulling his hat down low and leaning against the wall, George watched the ceremony while sipping his drink. Representing the students with Esper abilities were two of the 7 level 5 Esper Masters, Junha Shakuhao and Misaki Shakuhao. According to his intelligence, Junha Shakuhao was a natural Esper known as a groundstone, unlike the other 6. In Academy City, almost all Esper students acquire their abilities through the Esper system developed by Aleister. But only groundstone Espers were born with their abilities. Compared to other Esper Masters and Magicians, groundstone Espers were truly the darlings of this world, possessing abilities far exceeding those of ordinary people without any effort. If this were ancient times before Esper abilities and magic existed, they would be considered true gods in the eyes of humanity. Misaki Shakuhao, the only one among the 7 with psychic abilities, possesses powers such as mind reading, brainwashing, memory erasure, hallucinations, and telepathy. She is a strikingly beautiful blonde girl. At this moment, the two are standing on a high platform, giving speeches on behalf of the students. Initially, their speeches were relatively consistent, but halfway through, the one with the shaved board seemed to forget her lines and began to improvise. The scene quickly became somewhat out of control. Fortunately, although the shaved board was a bit of a chunibao, a Japanese term for someone with delusions of grandeur, his speech wasn't too outrageous. The host quickly grabbed the microphone and began announcing the next round of the competition. There are 18 events in total, divided into morning and afternoon sessions. Now we officially begin the first event, the wooden stick wrestling competition. As the competition officially began, students from various schools entered the audience, leaving many seats empty. It's her. At this moment, George also noticed someone. It was Index, whom he had met briefly before, the one with 103,000 grimoires in her mind. His eyes darted around, and he walked over. During this time, he had subtly learned a lot of the true secrets of the magical world from Aleister. His previous plan to learn magic from the libraries of various churches or from the memories of other mages was unrealistic. The magical tomes that allow one to learn magic are generally inaccessible to the average person. Only mages trained from childhood have the opportunity to access them, and these are guarded by powerful mages. Even with his current strength, if a conflict were to break out, he would likely be overwhelmed and unable to escape. Aleister, despite his immense strength, was severely injured in the past and has always concealed his identity. Furthermore, his ability to easily access Sherry's memories was only possible because it was an academy city, where many mages were forbidden from entering, and much of the detection was blocked. At the church headquarters, he wouldn't have succeeded so easily. If discovered, his actions would undoubtedly lead to him being hunted down by the entire church and even the entire magical world. Therefore, knowing this, he couldn't help but set his sights on the 103,000 grimoires in Index's mind. Aleister couldn't completely trust him and therefore couldn't impart all his magic to him without reservation, especially magic outside the modern magic system. If he wanted to thoroughly understand the essence of magic in this world and thus advance to become a demon god, he would still need to find a way to obtain Index's 103,000 mages. Just because he couldn't break through the magical defenses in Index's brain now didn't mean he wouldn't be able to in the future. Once he finished learning from Aleister, mastered most of the magic in this world, and formed his own magical system, he might be able to break through the defenses simply with his magical knowledge. Until then, perhaps he could make friends and build a good relationship. Hello, Index, my stomach. I'm so hungry. Index was lying on her seat, her pet calico kitten perched on her head, looking like she was about to starve. Hearing someone greet her, she slowly raised her head. It's you, Misaka. You're Misaka's sister. She initially thought it was Misaka Mikado, but seeing that she wasn't wearing a school uniform but rather men's clothing, she immediately remembered the guy who saved her last time and claimed to be Misaka's brother. Sister, is that how Misaka Mikado introduces me? George didn't seem to care much. Index nodded, and when she saw the various snacks George was holding, her eyes lit up and she stood up, drool practically dripping from her mouth. Wow, you have so much food, can you share some with me? Of course. Seeing this, George placed all the snacks on the chair in front of Index. It's all yours, you're such a good person, even better than your sister. Index immediately began to wolf down the food. At this moment, George took the opportunity to gently touch the back of Index's head and begin to use his mental abilities. But the next second, his hand was repelled by a powerful force. It's not working. He felt that if he wanted to forcefully break through the defensive magic in Index's brain using mental abilities, he would need to reach at least the level of Professor X at his peak. He gave up for now and turned his attention to the arena below. After a chaotic battle, only students from 2 schools remained, one of which was the school of Tuma Kamijao. Tuma Kamijao himself was also participating. This guy, could he really be a natural-born Genji? George's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched Tuma Kamijao in the match. Imagine Breaker, capable of obliterating all magic and supernatural powers, was far more domineering than Accelerator's ability. If he could acquire such an ability, he wouldn't be afraid of even encountering a single universe-level powerhouse, as long as they weren't physically superior opponents like the Celestials. He wondered if this Imagine Breaker ability could be simulated through analysis. But he figured it was unlikely. If it were possible, Aleister would have done it already. The superpowers in Academy City were developed by imitating the abilities of Genji users. If it were possible, Aleister would definitely try to imitate a monstrous ability like Tuma Kamijao's. They're here. Those two mages have already entered Academy City by car. As George was pondering, Aleister's voice came through his earpiece. Index, I have something to do, I'll be going now, George greeted Index, whose mouth was stuffed full of food. After hearing the voice, Index quickly swallowed her food and waved to George. Goodbye, Miss Akamikado's sister. Next time, I'll have Tuma treat you to a meal. 2 updates today due to family matters. Chapter 321 The Apostles' Cross. Who has the Thorn Spear Sword now? Flying stealthily through the air, George asked Aleister. He only needed to follow the person wielding the Thorn Spear Sword, because the key was to prevent this special magical weapon, capable of instantly killing a saint, from leaving Academy City and falling into the hands of the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, regardless of who had it, if anything went wrong, as long as he seized it, his mission would be complete. It's with Oriana Thompson. But something strange, that Roman Catholic, Ladovia Lorenzetti, only briefly visited Academy City before leaving. So their purpose might not be to trade the Thorn Spear Sword. The cunning Aleister had already sensed a conspiracy in the 2 female mages' unusual behavior. If they truly wanted to trade the Thorn Spear Sword, they should have met as quickly as possible, completed the transaction, and then swiftly retreated, instead of one wandering aimlessly within Academy City while the other simply made a quick trip and left. Should I just kill them outright? George asked again. His usual practice was to resolve problems before conspiracies even occurred, as this was the safest approach. However, Aleister clearly disagreed with his thinking. A mage dying in Academy City is a troublesome matter. Let's see what their purpose is. Whatever, I don't care, George nodded. Whatever conspiracy the Roman Catholic Church might have, it was none of his concern. He was simply making a deal with Aleister, so he would do whatever Aleister said. However, he had a vague feeling that Aleister's reluctance for him to directly intervene and end the conspiracy wasn't just what he had just explained. It seemed to be related to Kamijao Tuma. His intuition told him that Aleister seemed to value Kamijao Tuma highly. It was understandable. Imagine Breaker, who could eliminate all magic and supernatural abilities, was indeed worth paying attention to. Looks like it's her. Following Aleister's directions, he quickly found the delivery woman, Oriana Thompson. She was a mature woman around 30 years old, with dazzling, fluffy blonde curls and blue eyes. She was dressed very provocatively, and her figure was incredibly voluptuous. She wore a gray men's work uniform, but only one button was fastened, leaving her completely naked underneath. She swayed as she walked, as if the single button might burst at any moment. She wore matching work trousers, but these were also unbuttoned and zipped up. If the trousers weren't so tight, she would have been exposed after only a few steps. Behind her was a long, unidentified object wrapped in cloth. Is that the spike sword? I can't sense any magical fluctuations. George looked at the object on Oriana's back, a fleeting look of doubt in his eyes. However, he didn't delve too deeply. A spirit weapon capable of instantly killing a saint was undoubtedly top tier. It was normal for it to conceal magical fluctuations. Besides, carrying such a top-tier spirit weapon, it was possible she had cast a spell to shield magical fluctuations beforehand to avoid detection. This girl's like she's just strolling around. She doesn't seem to have any sense of urgency. Floating above Oriana, George observed that she was aimlessly wandering around, at most scouting the area and familiarizing herself with Academy City. How strange. About an hour later, he noticed that Oriana had actually approached Tuma Kamijao and, under the guise of greeting him and shaking his hand, attempted to cast some kind of magic on him. Unfortunately, her attempt was thwarted by Tuma's right-hand ability, and she then tried to retreat. However, Tuma also noticed something was amiss and, while contacting his 2 teammates, secretly followed her. Unfortunately, as a skill tracker, Tuma's pursuit was quickly discovered by Oriana. Oriana pulled out a card from a string of hundreds of cards connected by metal rings, put it in her mouth, and the card was instantly covered by a spell, transforming into a communication spell similar to telephone. From the content of her conversation, George deduced that she was calling Ladovia Lorenzetti, a high-ranking member of the Roman Catholic Church. This magic is quite interesting. Seeing Oriana communicate over long distances with just a single spell, George immediately showed interest. He didn't have any magic with a similar effect among the spells he was currently learning. He could send messages from his guardian spirits over long distances, but the guardian spirits needed time to travel. He could create a magic crystal ball from the fairy tale world, but that was a magical item that required time to make beforehand, not as convenient. Since you're here, your magic is mine. It wasn't easy to do it outside, but in Academy City, he could do what he did to Sherry, secretly reading Oriana's memories after the event and copying all the magical knowledge from her mind into his own. It was a pity that the high-ranking member of the Roman Catholic Church wasn't in Academy City, otherwise he would have copied that person's memories as well. Oriana noticed Tuma Kamajau following her and ran frantically, finally entering a large warehouse. She then pulled out several cards and arranged them in the warehouse. Following Tuma Kamajau's phone call, the Puritan mage and one of his classmates also caught up. A fierce battle ensued inside the warehouse, with Oriana successfully escaping thanks to the various elemental magic traps she had set up beforehand. George, of course, continued to follow Oriana. What followed was a contest of tracking and counter-tracking magic, which lasted until the afternoon, when Tuma Kamajau finally caught up with Oriana. Using Imagine Breaker's ability to nullify magic, he temporarily subdued Oriana in close combat and seized the spike sword from her back. However, when he opened the package, he discovered that it contained not the spike sword at all, but just an ordinary shop sign. The item is fake. What do we do now? Should I intervene? George continued to follow the fleeing Oriana to an empty underground staircase and told Aleister about the situation. Aleister quickly replied, "Intervene. News has come from the Puritan bishops that the spike sword does not exist. What they brought this time is the highest level spirit weapon that the Roman Catholic Church has always refused to acknowledge, the Apostles' Cross, the Apostles' Cross. There really is such a spirit weapon." George was somewhat stunned upon hearing this. He had seen descriptions of this spirit garment in Shirley's memory, but the Roman Catholic Church has always denied its existence, considering it a fabricated rumor used by other churches to attack the Roman Catholic Church. Chapter 322 blushed a little. The Apostles' Cross, according to legend, is the highest level spiritual artifact created in imitation of the cross erected in the tomb of St. Peter, one of the 12 apostles. Once planted in the ground, everything within its effective range becomes the domain of the Roman Catholic Church, and all people and things within it are subject to its control. Even the most unreasonable decisions made by the Roman Catholic Church will be accepted without question. Furthermore, all believers within this domain will feel immense happiness, even if they toil all day, even to the point of death. In George's view, this spiritual artifact is practically a large-scale mind hypnotic control device. So, their real target is Academy City? George realized at this moment. The Roman Catholic Church used a fake spikes as bait, ostensibly to deal with the Puritan saints, but actually to deceive them, ultimately planting the Apostles' Cross in Academy City and turning the entire city into Roman Catholic territory. Their target isn't just Academy City, they want to seize Academy City first, then unify its power, wipe out all other magical organizations, and directly rule the entire world. Aleister succinctly revealed the true ambition of the Roman Catholic Church. Academy City has so many superhumans, including level 5 superhumans like Accelerator, who are even more monstrous than saints, and various high-tech weapons far surpassing modern technology. If the Roman Catholic Church were to acquire all of these, the world's original balance would be completely shattered. Aleister absolutely could not allow this outcome, so he no longer cared about training Tuma Kamajau and decided to have George intervene directly to stop them and seize the Apostle Cross. No problem, George nodded, preparing to act, when he saw Oriana strip off her clothes, which were somewhat damaged in the battle, and, naked, take a pre-prepared handbag from the bottom of the stairs and begin changing. Let's wait a bit, the signboard has already been retrieved, and the matter of the thrusting sword has most likely been exposed. But it's alright, leave it to me, I'll handle everything here. The final result will definitely be as we expect, this city will become happy, and all parts of the world will become happy. Oriana adjusted her hot, super short tank top and ended her conversation with Ladovia. Just as she was about to leave the underground stairwell to continue luring the pursuers, a figure suddenly appeared behind her. "Beautiful lady, can you tell me where you hid the Apostles' Cross? You tracked us down so quickly. It seems the Church of Necessary Evil is quite capable." Oriana stiffened, then turned around. "No wonder, it was you. As a mage extremely skilled in tracking and counter-tracking magic, Being tracked down so quickly and not being detected even at such close range was indeed surprising. But when she saw that the person was Misaka Mikado, one of the level 5 ability users of Academy City, she understood. She figured the people of Academy City must have sensed something and sent a level 5 ability user to investigate, using technological tracking, which was why she hadn't noticed. Then let me see what a level 5 ability user really is. Without further ado, Oriana immediately bid off a card and began casting magic. Symbol of Earth, a 5 or 6 meter high wave of Earth surged towards George, attempting to bury him. George flashed lightning, blasting the wave away instantly. Unless absolutely necessary, he wouldn't use overtly obvious magic, preferring to fight using his superpowers and physical abilities. If the magical world knew he could use both superpowers and magic, it would cause a major upheaval. Currently, the technological and magical sides are balanced mainly because those with superpowers cannot use magic, and vice versa. If someone could use both magic and superpowers, it would mean the two could be combined. By acquiring the superpowers of those with special abilities, a mage can use both magic and superpowers, greatly increasing their strength. However, after watching the battle between Oriana and Tuma, he felt that superpowers alone were enough to solve the problem. His current superpower level was level 5, the same as Misaka Mikado's original form. Furthermore, he also possessed Magneto's genes, effectively surpassing Misaka Mikado's level. His electric discharge was stronger than Misaka Mikado's, and he could manipulate metal like Magneto. His current metal manipulation strength could reach 1,000 tons, 100 times greater than before. This was partly due to the significant leap from level 4 to level 5, and partly due to his previous fusion with dragon crystals and learning Dragon Slayer magic, which greatly enhanced his physical constitution. Not bad in strength, but not so smart. The earth wave dispersed, and Oriana's figure disappeared, reappearing behind George. It turned out the earth wave attack was mainly for cover. She knew some information about Misaka Mikado and knew the earth wave wouldn't be effective. Her real purpose was to circle around and unleash an unstoppable spell at close range. Symbol of Earth, Bloodline Burst. This is a spell that can affect an enemy's blood, causing it to swell in their blood vessels and rupture. Most mages and ability users aren't much stronger than ordinary people. A ruptured blood vessel would not only kill them instantly but also severely injure them, rendering them unable to continue fighting. She had defeated many mages stronger than herself using this spell. As long as she didn't encounter someone with a monstrous physique like a saint, it wouldn't be a big problem. Interesting spell. George turned to look at Oriana, a slight flush appearing on his face, but it quickly faded. He had just felt his blood being affected by the other spell, but since he was practically a humanoid dragon, this surge of blood couldn't possibly break through his blood vessels. It would have to be at least dozens of times stronger to have any chance. However, he was still quite interested in this kind of spell that directly affected blood. To be honest, this Deliveryman mage knew quite a few spells. How could this be? Oriana was stunned to see that George's face had only flushed slightly and he was completely unharmed. She clearly remembered that in the intelligence report, the level 5 ability user Misaka Mikado's ability was electric shock, not a physical enhancement ability, so it shouldn't be able to block her magic. Chapter 323 George's Value. Could it be that the surge of blood was neutralized by electricity? If so, then accept Big Sister's death throw. Oriana didn't believe George could withstand her magic with his bare hands, assuming he had somehow broken it using electricity. So she immediately rushed forward and grabbed George in her arms. Besides being a mage, she was also a master of close combat. Even ordinary knights were no match for her in melee. She had deliberately closed the distance to cast that spell, and now she was taking advantage of his unpreparedness to launch a close-quarters attack. Oh my god, is she offering herself up? George didn't dodge, but just smiled and winked. From Oriana's speed when she fled and her performance in battle, he had already judged that Oriana's physical abilities didn't exceed the limits of ordinary humans. Even with superior fighting skills, she couldn't possibly hurt him. Since she was so willingly walking into the lion's den, he just had to wait. Oriana rushed to George, grabbed his waist, and then executed a standard German back throw. Aha! George's head and neck made direct contact with the ground, taking full force of the attack. Done. Oriana released her grip and stood up, turning to look at George on the ground, only to find him lying there with wide eyes, staring at her. Was that fun? Impossible. Seeing the cracks in the ground beside George's head, while George seemed completely unharmed, Oriana was shocked again. At that moment, A flash of electricity struck George, and he appeared before Oriana, unleashing a billion volts of high-voltage electricity. Oriana was immediately jolted violently by the shock, her eyes rolling back, on the verge of losing consciousness. But true to her combat experience, she endured the numbness in her body and unleashed her final and strongest magic in the last moments before her consciousness faded. Elemental gathering, all the cards in her hand shattered, and various elements coalesced, forming a white sphere of light that devoured everything like a black hole, sucking George and the lightning he had unleashed. Taking advantage of the moment, Oriana immediately turned and fled. She knew her magic wouldn't hold her opponent for long, she needed to escape quickly. There were still several hours until the plan was complete, and she couldn't afford to be caught now. The magic is good, but the person who cast it isn't strong enough. George pulled back his hands, and the plasma cannon shot out, forcefully shattering the white sphere of light in an instant. Oriana's white sphere of light was quite powerful, although not a black hole, it had a certain resemblance. If it weren't for the vast difference in their strength, it would have been difficult to break. Damn it, are level 5 ability users this strong? If this continues, we won't be able to hold out until the stars appear. Oriana endured the numbness in her body and ran as fast as she could towards the underground staircase exit, her face filled with anxiety. She felt that even a saint wouldn't be this strong. Ouch! Just as she stepped out of the underground staircase, the metal utility pole beside her instantly coiled around her like a python, and then the high-voltage electricity struck again. This time, the voltage was even more ferocious. In just 1 second, she was stunned unconscious. Since you're unwilling to tell me, you can see for yourself. George appeared before Oriana and touched her forehead. 5 minutes later, he slowly opened his eyes. So that's how it is. Next, he told Aleister about Oriana and Ladovia's true plan. It turned out that Oriana, the delivery person, and Ladovia of the Roman Catholic Church were actually friends. Her purpose wasn't to deliver the goods, nor was it to insert the Apostle Cross into Academy City, but rather to attract the attention of Academy City and all the Puritan magicians. The real Apostle Cross was already in Ladovia's hands, and Ladovia was hiding in a hotel outside Academy City, waiting to make her move. Because the Apostle Cross's effective range was as high as 47,000 square kilometers, even if it was triggered outside Academy City, it could cover the entire Academy City. However, there were conditions for using the Apostle Cross. The Apostle Cross was a large-scale spiritual weapon activated by borrowing the power of constellations. It required calculating in advance which of the 88 constellations was most suitable based on the corresponding location, and then activating it on the night that constellation appeared. It cannot be interrupted during activation, and the noise is extremely loud. It can only be used once a year in one location. If they were to rashly activate this spirit dress outside Academy City, it would inevitably be discovered by Academy City and the Puritan magicians, leading to its interruption. Therefore, Oriana would act as bait to attract the attention of Academy City and the Puritan magicians, while Ladovia would activate the Apostle Cross when the night sky was clear, covering the entire Academy City. This way, even if they were discovered, Academy City and the Puritan magicians would be too late to stop them. Luckily you discovered it, otherwise it would have been really troublesome. After listening to George's explanation, Aleister, hanging upside down in the life device, couldn't help but narrow his eyes. If Ladovia's plan succeeded, unless he risked exposure by leaving the life device to stop her, he might actually fall victim to it. At this moment, he also realized George's value. Ordinary incidents could be handled by his organizations, but some more troublesome major events, like today's, were beyond their capabilities. The 7 level 5 ability users in Academy City generally have some personality issues, and most of them don't obey his orders, acting solely based on their own whims. Even when he needs to use them, it's always through elaborate schemes to get them to achieve their goals. But George is different. He's powerful, resourceful, and can disguise himself without being detected. As long as he's willing to teach him magic, George is willing to handle things for him, greatly reducing the risk of him being exposed. It's daytime now, and there are still 3 hours until the activation of the Apostle Cross. Should I go and bring that Ladovia back? Ladovia is in a hotel outside Academy City, but Oriana doesn't know which one. Aleister's Skylink surveillance system can only operate within Academy City and cannot leave to search outside. But that's alright. Since George knows Ladovia's name, he can use the tracking magic from the Harry Potter world to track her location. As for Ladovia's strength, according to intelligence, Ladovia is a missionary of the Roman Catholic Church. Although she is a bishop, her magical strength may not be as good as Oriana, who has more experience in actual combat. Chapter 324 Level 6 Ability User Experiment. Then please bring her and the Apostle Cross back together. Allister's voice came through the earpiece, and George nodded. Just as he was about to use tracking magic, 3 figures appeared in front of him. It turned out to be two Kamar-Taj's trio, who had confirmed Oriana's location using the Puritan Church's Reason School 4-element magic and then came looking for her. Misaka, you're Misaka's sister, what are you doing here? And her, two Kamar-Taj saw George and thought he was Misaka Mikado, but seeing his boyish clothes, he immediately recognized him as the Misaka sister he had encountered last time. However, seeing the bound and unconscious Oriana, he froze on the spot. Oh, I saw this female mage acting suspiciously on the underground stairs, and she looked a bit like the one I encountered last time, so I questioned her. Who knew she would attack me, so I knocked her unconscious with electricity. What, do you know her? George made up a story upon seeing this. Two Kamar-Taj's trio exchanged bewildered glances. They chased her for ages, only to be completely outmaneuvered and seriously injured. And then she was just knocked unconscious by Misaka Mikado. This Misaka Mikado seems even more terrifying than her older sister, Misaka Mikado. I know her. Can you hand her over to us? Of course. I have other things to do, I'm leaving. George waved and left, finding an empty alley and apparating to the outskirts of Academy City. Direction Manifestation, Ladovia Lorenzetti. Guided by a tracking spell, he quickly found Ladovia in a high-end hotel, dressed in a nun's habit, and also saw the Apostle Cross wrapped in her spirit dress. Who's there? Ladovia's expression changed drastically upon seeing George suddenly appear before her. George looked at Ladovia and joked, Ladovia, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent, but what you say? The joke was cut short when Ladovia launched an attack. 5 minutes later, George, carrying the stunned Ladovia and the Apostle Cross, returned to Academy City. However, he didn't immediately return to the windowless building. Instead, he first reviewed Ladovia's memories. It wasn't just about magic. As a high-ranking member of the Roman Catholic Church, Ladovia undoubtedly knew many secrets of this world, which would greatly help him understand it. The right seed of God. These churches are indeed extraordinary, George murmured to himself after copying Ladovia's memories. From them, he learned that besides many powerful mages, the Roman Catholic Church also had a 4-person organization called the Right Seed of God, possessing terrifying power. This was a highly secretive organization within the Roman Catholic Church, known only to a few high-ranking members. The Right Seed of God was created to overcome original sin. Each member had weakened their original sin to a very low level, making their constitution very close to that of an angel, thus enabling them to use angelic spells. Furthermore, each of the 4 corresponded to one of the 4 archangels. Apparating back to the hall where Allister was, George threw Ladovia to the ground. Done. Can I borrow the Apostle Cross for a couple of days to study it? He'd been researching spirit gear these past few days, and the Apostle Cross was the highest level spirit gear, naturally very valuable for research. Allister smiled and replied, it's yours. It's your spoils of war. What about the Roman Catholic Church? George's face showed surprise. He hadn't expected Allister to give him such a top-tier spirit gear directly. Would the Roman Catholic Church go crazy? Allister shook his head. Since they want to target the entire Academy City, then don't blame me for taking their highest level spirit gear. Anyway, they don't even acknowledge the existence of this spirit gear. As an institution capable of confronting the entire magical world, Academy City had been schemed against like this. If they didn't retaliate, it would be too much to ask. This was also a good opportunity to win over George. To achieve his plan and create a world without demons and magic, he needed to win over all the forces he could and scheme against everyone he could. After understanding George's value, he already had a series of plans for dealing with him. Thank you very much then. George's eyes darted around, and he roughly understood what was going on. The Apostles' Cross could only be used for 1 year at a time in the same place, and it could only be used by the most devout Roman Catholics. Therefore, George could only use it for research and couldn't use it to cause any further impact on Academy City, so naturally, it posed no threat. The key was that this spiritual equipment was only valuable to the Roman Catholic Church, other forces would have no use for it. Holding the Apostles' Cross, George was about to leave when he was suddenly stopped by Allister. Last time you said you wanted to advance to level 6 absolute ability user. Perhaps some information could be very helpful to you. A level 6 ability user, with a non-god's body, comprehends the will of the gods. Although their strength is far inferior to that of a true demon god, it is still a very strong asset. Originally, he didn't plan to tell George, but now, he felt that if George could advance to level 6 absolute ability user, coupled with his magical level, it might really help him fight against a demon god in the future. A level 6 ability user, hearing Aleister's words, George instantly stopped in his tracks. Level 5 had already significantly boosted his superpowers. If he could reach level 6, he could truly transform into Thor and, like Magneto after Apocalypse's development, reverse the Earth's magnetic field, greatly enhancing his strength. 20 minutes later, George walked out of the hall and returned to his room. Aleister had just told him some information. Tomorrow, a mad scientist named Kamar-Taj, the advocate of the Absolute Ability User Project, planned to evolve Misaka Mikado into level 6 Esper by manipulating the Misaka network. However, because it was a forced evolution, Misaka Mikado's body would completely collapse and she would die the moment she evolved to level 6. Kamar-Taj's purpose in doing this was to obtain experimental data related to entering the realm of gods after advancing from level 5 to level 6, so as to truly create level 6 absolute ability users in the future. George's body was also a Misaka clone and could actively enter the Misaka network. If he joined in Misaka Mikado's evolution process, he could clearly experience the entire process of his superpowers evolving to level 6. This way, he could follow the same process and gradually raise his superpowers to level 6. He wasn't Misaka Mikado, whose physical potential was only at level 5. His body had improved as his various clones merged, and his potential had definitely exceeded level 5. With a direction in mind, all that was left was time. Chapter 325 Approaching the Realm of God. The next morning, George arrived at the stadium again. The Dehase festival was being held for a week, and today was the second day. His goal for the day was to keep a close eye on Misaka Mikado, access the Misaka network when she began to evolve, and experience the entire process from level 5 to level 6. Floating invisibly in the air, he watched as Misaka Mikado and Kokoro Mitsuko teamed up to win a three-legged race. Later, while Misaka Mikado was changing clothes in her dormitory, a Misaka clone who had stayed in Academy City for treatment was mistaken for Misaka Mikado and pulled into the next match. Then came the kidnapping of the Misaka clone by Misaki Shakuha's men, and Misaka Mikado's search for the clone, among other events. He had anticipated these developments when Aleister gave him the information yesterday, so he wasn't too surprised. He didn't participate in the entire event, only observing from the air. Until evening, Kamar-Taj found the Misaka clone on the rooftop, controlled the Misaka network through the Misaka Mikado clone, and lured Misaka Mikado to the rooftop. What would happen if you used Aleister's preferred candidate, hidden in the shadows of the first backup, as a catalyst for your pure power? Kamar-Taj pressed the button to control the Misaka network, and crimson lightning formed in the sky, instantly pouring into Misaka Mikado's body. The lightning power within Misaka Mikado's body began to surge wildly, her entire body enveloped in white lightning, and even horns formed from lightning faintly sprouted from her head. Almost there, George pulled back his hands in midair. Plasma cannon. The massive plasma cannon instantly killed Kamar-Taj, who was still immersed in the start of the experiment. He didn't want to be interfered with by Kamar-Taj through his external brain during the process of connecting with Misaka Mikado from level 5 to level 6. It was safer to eliminate this biggest variable first. Landing in front of Misaka Mikado, George reached out and grabbed her shoulders, actively entering the Misaka network, and then entering Misaka Mikado's mind, trying to assimilate with her as much as possible. At that moment, the lightning-infused armor surrounding Misaka Mikado spread to George. George could clearly sense the evolution of Misaka Mikado's physical abilities and all the sensations associated with the evolution. "Excuse me, little sister, you're not welcome here." Entering Misaka Mikado's mental world, he discovered a girl manipulating Misaka Mikado's mind, attempting to attack a windowless building. He grabbed her by the neck and flung her out of Misaka Mikado's mental world. The girl's name was Kensuke Kanzaki, a former friend of Dolly, the Zero Misaka clone, and one of the test subjects of the Sai Artificial Intelligence Workshop. She was arrested and imprisoned for launching a terrorist attack against the Academy City Council after Dolly's death, and then deceived by Kamar-Taj. She wanted to use the evolved Misaka Mikado to attack Chairman Aleister in revenge. Now I can start advancing properly, using his mental abilities to drive away Kenso Kanzaki. George began to experience the entire process of evolving from level 5 to level 6 with Misaka Mikado. 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, when they evolved to 30%, the lightning armor on their bodies changed again. With faint halos of lightning appearing above their heads, and ribbons of lightning appearing around them as if they were real. Mentally, George vaguely felt that he had grasped the essence of lightning. The lightning magic he had learned before suddenly became so clear and simple. All his previous doubts and confusion about lightning magic disappeared at once. It felt as if he had been studying various lightning magics for hundreds of years. If he were to finish advancing now, he felt that with his current understanding of lightning, the power of those lightning magic spells would be greatly increased. Even the ancient lightning magic that originally required several minutes of chanting could now be released in just over 10 seconds. How come both of them have been affected? The rooftop door was pushed open, and Kamijao Tuma and Kirito Gunha rushed up. However, they were stunned to see that both Misaka had entered the evolution stage. Save them first, the two men grabbed at George and Misaka Mikado from the left and right respectively. Although George's eyes were closed, he was aware of his surroundings and naturally noticed the two. Not yet, while manipulating the lightning ribbons on his body to continuously knock away the board-slicing thugs, he also manipulated the steel bars beneath the rooftop to burst forth from the ground and bind Kamijao Tuma's feet. Kamijao Tuma's right hand could dispel any supernatural abilities or magic. If it touched his body, his current advanced state might be cancelled. Therefore, he naturally had to stop the two from moving. As for Misaka Mikado's safety, he was currently connected to her, and if things reached their limit, he would awaken Misaka Mikado to stop her evolution. Kamijao Tuma realized that his hands were bound by the steel bars deep underground and immediately reached out his right hand to try to break George's control over the steel bars. However, although he managed to break free, the deformed and bound steel bars remained, and he had to pry them open to continue moving. But then another problem arose. Just as he pried open the steel bar on his left foot to try and pry open his right, George controlled the broken bar to re-entangle his left foot. And when he tried to pry open his right foot to pry open his right foot was entangled again. Having watched Tuma Kamijao's battle yesterday, he discovered many of Tuma's weaknesses. Tuma's right hand could indeed dispel any magic and supernatural abilities, but it was limited to his right hand. While his body was stronger than a normal person, it wasn't beyond human limits. Therefore, anyone who could outpace his right hand's reaction speed could easily subdue him. While Tuma was struggling with the steel bar, Misaka Mikado's advancement progress bar was rapidly increasing. 35%, 40%, 50%, 51%, reached the limit. When Misaka Mikado's evolution surpassed 50%, her body began to become somewhat transparent, her entire head was replaced by countless stars, and the lightning turned black, enveloping both of them. At this moment, George felt that he and Misaka Mikado had seemingly touched upon a corner of the world's divine level. However, he knew he couldn't continue any longer. If they did, Misaka Mikado's personality would completely disappear, and his own soul would be severely affected, making it impossible to control the situation. Perhaps if he persisted to the limit, he could glimpse the realm of a 6th-level god, but afterwards, both his own body and Misaka Mikado would be annihilated. Losing an avatar of an entire world like this was, overall, not worth it. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.